surrounded by journalists. Hold your position.
Market clearing order inbound.
You're watching TBPN. Today is Friday, June 13th, 2025. We are live from the TBPN Ultra Dome, the Temple of Technology, the Fortress of Finance, the capital of capital. We have a great show for you today, folks. We're covering lots of stuff, taking you all over the world. We are going to touch on what's going on in Iran. You know, we're not a political show, but obviously this has taken over the timeline, and we do want to understand a little bit about what's going on. So we're going to have our good friend Josh Steinman jump on, get us up to speed. We're going to run through a few posts before we bring him in. First one. Apparently, there's a G-Wagon angle here. Have you heard this? So
of course.
Faraz Khan, friend of the show, says, I love my G-Wagons. The Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, G-Class, exists largely because of Iran, specifically due to the influence and initiative of Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran in the early 1970s.
Yeah, so it was built for him.
Oh, yes,
It
that's
was
right.
Built for the Shah,
So-
purpose-built, and became so popular that it became a global icon and arguably top 5 car
Fantastic car.
of all time.
So hopefully we can move past the geopolitical conflict and get back to what matters, building cool cars together in a global community.
They probably have some insane vintage G-Wagons
Probably.
on the ground.
Hopefully
in
none of them
Iran.
were destroyed.
Yes.
Well, it's absolute chaos in the timeline. Walter Bloomberg has a quote from Trump
this
to the
guy.
Wall Street Journal. We'll see if this is a real quote. I don't know. Attack would be great for the market because Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. The market was not responding to that right now.
Michael Burry
is confused. And Shane Copeland does have the market you should be tracking. Polymarket, the odds of an Israeli military strike against Iran were surging yesterday before the market started selling off. So Polymarket was once again ahead. And so Shane says you knew this was coming if you were checking Polymarket. That's why we're proud to partner with Polymarket, because they bring you the news before it happens.
That's right.
Well, we will
and there
kick
was
it over. Yeah.
there was some interesting activity. People were looking
Pizza
on
Index.
Chain. Well, that
On-chain.
too, but people were looking on Polychain. Apparently, a wallet on a few different occasions during Israeli strikes, like
Was moving
12
money
hours
around.
before, would people were creating accounts potentially to trade against this stuff. So Anyways,
Well,
they're
check
doing
it
a
out.
service for other people to understand the world a little bit better.
But we're going to try and understand what's going on. So let's bring in Josh Steinman, the founder of Galvanick, to break it down for us. Thanks so much for taking the time and hopping on. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Explain to us, first off, let's start with what's going on right now. There's a lot of posts. It's really hard to make sense of all what's AI slop. There's some really striking images. I saw one crazy photo of what appeared to be a drone that went directly into a single bedroom. Very, very precise. How precise are these targets? What's actually going on? What's the scale of this? Is this World War III? And then I want to get a little bit of the history from you.
Yeah. So first of all, I think precision targeting is not like a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even as far back as like the first Gulf War, there were reports that American cruise missiles were able to target, very specific locations. Like, the thing that got leaked to the media was like, oh, we can hit a bedroom window with a cruise missile. And I can't speak to whether or not that's accurate, but that's over 30 years ago. So you can just think like things have gotten a lot better. I think the big takeaway right here is we're seeing actual like next generation asymmetric capabilities being deployed. And they're being deployed in a way in which we're literally seeing them. Obviously, the footage is getting leaked. There's all these reports of like Iranian missiles failing at launch. So you have like possible next generation cyber weapons being deployed. Maybe it's RFEW, you don't know. But this is like really stuff that's happening. I mean, they built drone bases supposedly inside Iran, which is wild. Although obviously we just saw the Ukrainians do the same thing against the Russians.
Yeah, I heard some report that I think 100 suicide drones left from Iran. None of them made it to Israel. And so some defense technology was clearly employed there to stop that. Or maybe it's just shoddy manufacturing. Who knows?
Yeah. Look, the point that I'd make here is like, you just have to hand it to the president of the United States, because from his perspective, this is all just a negotiation. Like, this guy's the GOAT, And he's just like, hey, we're still open for negotiation. Like, we're going to kill half your leadership. And like, we'll see you at the table in 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first
what
time.
What did you think about the, people were sharing around 61 days ago, I guess he gave like a 60-minute kind of deadline, or sorry, 60-day deadline.
We're on day 61.
Day
and
61,
here we are.
this happened.
Yeah.
Were you reading into that at all? Were you expecting it?
I wasn't personally expecting it, but it does make sense. Now, the question of whether or not that was directed or agreed upon, or just sort of like a shelling point, like the Israelis looked at that date and they're like, okay, if we do it on this date, it'll seem coherent. You don't know. I think probably one of the few people who will know on the planet is the president. But it is nice because, I mean, the president is very open about what he wants. And I think, for the past 20 years, our foreign policy leaders, whether it's the president or Secretary of State, they sort of had this like very amateurish attitude to foreign policy. Like, oh, we're just going to play nice with everybody. And Trump is just like, no, we don't want you to have a nuclear weapon. We're 100% fine with all of these other things. We're negotiating on this. And like, yeah, there are going to be consequences, and you're literally going to see them right now.
Okay, give me a little bit of the history.
Is it before we get into the history, is it too early? People on the timeline are calling it the one-day war. They're taking victory laps.
And then there's the other side, which is it's World War III. I was seeing that a lot last night. Which one is it?
It just feels a little too early for people to be claiming victory, given we don't know the consequences. We've also had a pretty porous border for years, so I think there should be concern, even at home around.
Yeah, Sun Tzu and Clausewitz both write about how politics and war are essentially extensions of the same thing, right? How do you get other nations to do what you want them to do, or to come to a negotiated, agreement, etc. So I think, I don't know. I'm not even sure the degree to which, if at all, the United States is involved. What I would say is it seems like Iranian air defense systems are essentially zeroed out. So the war will go on as long as the Israelis want it to go on. And so at that point, then you create this like, interesting triangulation relationship where the president is still offering what remains of the Iranian leadership an olive branch. It is up to them to take it. If they don't, they have to know that the Israelis essentially have the capability and intention and the willingness to essentially just do whatever they want, including high-level leadership targets. And I think you have to imagine, if you're the Iranians, that, you're asking what else do they have in the toolbox.
Give me a little bit of the history. I think most of us are familiar with the meme of like, this is a picture of Iran before the revolution, very modern. We used to be allies. Iran used to be a massive, I think, third largest GDP in the world.
Used to be an ally of Israel, by the way. Just talk about like weird turnabouts of
crazy.
history.
So walk me through kind of the story of like how we got to this point.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot here, and I would encourage people to do their own research. Lots of great books, and I'm by no means an expert's expert, although I have been was working in this area for, at this point, almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
So there was a revolution in Iran to push back against leaders that the United States and the UK supported and wanted to remain in power.
And the main flip there was they went from essentially a capitalist democracy to a communist theocracy, more or less.
The Shah of Iran was essentially, and he's still here, you could say. I think he lives in Los Angeles. So I'd say more of a like capitalist monarchy, although you'd have to go into the full details of how the government was architected. So
it was very compatible with American.
It's interesting that he landed in the land of the G-Wagon.
Is it a coincidence?
The car that not a coincidence at all, I would imagine.
He brought it here. Okay.
So there was pushback. There were elections. There was a lot of foment. The government essentially fell, and then there was sort of a second revolution that happened shortly thereafter, where the hardline Shia Islamic theocrats came to power. So the first, the first sort of situation happens where there's this, not failed election, but an election where the government is not reified, I guess you could say. I'm just trying to like compress all this down. So that you have, a lot of unrest, and then the Islamic revolution comes to power in
hostage
Iran.
crisis, obviously.
A lot of things happened. For folks that don't know, you could check out how, they took Americans hostage that were at the embassy during this revolution. That was in 1979. Again, a lot of dense history here.
400 days. It was a long hostage crisis. 400 days. Like that's really long.
And it happened alongside the presidential election campaign for Jimmy Carter. He lost. Reagan won. Famously, the Iranians didn't let the hostages go. At the same time, there was a failed hostage rescue attempt that has very interesting history into the architecture of the U.S. Department of Defense. U.S. Special Operations Command comes out of that failure, known as Desert One. So a lot of history there. I think for folks that are not really tuned in on this, the thing that I would say is, the Iranians were very active in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their explosively formed penetrators killed hundreds of Americans, their individual operatives, who were both Iranian nationals and Iraqi nationals, also directly responsible for the deaths of a ton of folks.
This is Qasem Soleimani for a long time leading the Quds Force in Iraq, right?
Yep. So a lot of that. And so, there's a lot of bad blood. Yeah. And so I'm not saying that, we should go to war with Iran. I actually think let the Israelis handle it. I'd prefer we close the border. But at the same time, like, they're not good guys. They've been killing Americans for a very long time in a bunch of different places. And I think you've had a lot of U.S. Senior leaders, whether it's President Obama or others, try and find ways to build bridges to that government and essentially been rebuffed and then, doubled down on. So it's just like, no heroes.
Last question from me. Yesterday, the internet went down. Cloudflare, Google. The tinfoil hat crowd is saying maybe they're linked. Happened. I mean, Cloudflare said this is not. We weren't attacked. We would say if we were attacked because it would be a get out of jail free card. Like it seemed like it was an issue with their key value store. What's your take?
I don't know. Obviously, you always want to wait until more facts come out.
Yeah.
The timing didn't seem.
We don't need
like
facts. Give us the hottest take?
No
kidding.
Wait, sorry. Random things sometimes happen, boys. So say la vie.
Well,
do you think we'll ever have clarity on the outage yesterday? It was.
I think Cloudflare did a pretty good job explaining, but I don't know.
Look, here's what I would say for folks that want to look to the future. Like, what's the Iranian response going to be? They absolutely have, how many foreign sabotage teams are operating on U.S. soil? They absolutely have assets here in the United States. Those assets absolutely have access to asymmetric capabilities. Those could be drones. It could be like hit squads, et cetera. And I think that you'll be able to gauge the temperature by whether or not those assets start to get activated and start to then go after things here in the United States, especially because the president has been clear, like maybe he was aware of what was going to happen, but there was no official, logistical U.S. support for the Israeli operation. Like they did that themselves. Maybe there was some sort of like, sure, do whatever you want, permission from the United States, but you have a statement from Marco Rubio. And so I would just say, like, stay tuned. The asymmetric tools that were used against the Iranians are not, unique to them. These are things that are out in the wild right now. So I'm certainly going to be paying a lot of attention to that. And for TBPN viewers, I say that's where I'd, be looking.
Well, thank you for monitoring the situation.
Yes.
On behalf of us.
There's no better place to monitor the situation than from the TBPN Ultra Dome.
That's essentially what we're doing at TBPN. Is
from the Fortress.
We're constantly just monitoring the situation.
That's what the show's all about. Thank you so much for hopping on, Josh. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Josh. Cheers.
Enjoy your weekend. Well, in some good news, Chime went public. 12 years ago, Kristen Green writes, the founders had a simple conviction: Americans deserve better from their banks. Chime went public with 8.6 million members, 121 billion in annual volume, and an average of 54 transactions per member per month. So congratulations to the Chime team. They rung the bell.
Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to Kirsten Green on being their first institutional backer. Great outcome.
Congratulations.
How are they trading? Is the big question.
Oh, it went way up. It did very well. The company climbed 37% in debut after $864 million IPO. Very good news. We can go into the whole story. I'd love to know a little bit more about the backstory. I'd love to have
the CEO I actually guess it priced at $18.4 billion.
That's great.
Originally, or that's kind of where they debuted, and now it's trading at 11. So it's down a little bit. But still, that's in the range that I think a lot of analysts were anticipating, or how they felt it would be fairly valued.
Well, if you love fintech, you got to get on ramp.com. Time is money, save both. Easy to use corporate cards, bill payments, accounting, and a whole lot more, all in one place. And we have Ramp has Andrew as a customer. We have a fun activity today in the studio. We have Tyler Cosgrove, our intern over there. He will be assembling a Fury drone made out of Legos that was very courteously sent to us from the Andrew team. How you doing?
Good. I'm very excited.
Break it down for us. What's the plan?
The Fury Andrew drone. It's a Group 5 autonomous air vehicle. So I think it's 1/24 scale. So the real thing is, I believe, 20 feet long, which is like around half the length of a F-16.
Okay.
But yeah, there's how many pieces are in here?
When's the last time you put together a Lego set?
I was probably 12.
Okay.
So
it's been
like 8 years.
So a few years ago.
I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know who has the current record on the the speed run of this.
Yes, I think you can set the world record.
I think you can set it.
It might be like Palmer's kids, but I believe they're pretty young.
Yeah, they are.
So I think I should have.
You're gonna smoke them.
Yeah, you're gonna smoke them. Okay, so we're going for a world record. We're not doing any percent here. We're doing 100%. We're doing glitchless. I don't want to see any cheats employed over there.
Yeah.
We're going to be tracking the timer. Production team's going to start a timer. I don't know if we're going to be able to put it on the screen, but we will be tracking him. So on your marks, get set.
Do we wait? Do we want to have any like consequences, like fantasy football style?
Oh yes. I have something for you. I think it's in my car. I have. If you can do it under how long do you think it's going to take him?
I mean, I think if you can do it, the reward should be under
30 minutes.
20 minutes?
20 minutes? That's
no,
pretty
under
fast.
30. Under 30.
Okay, if you can do it under 30, I have an Anduril t-shirt and it's shareholder worn. It's a shareholder worn Anduril jersey.
Wow. That's powerful.
Let's
go.
Jersey.
Okay.
Worn
We
by
should
a
get it signed.
shareholder.
I bet we could get it signed.
We can get it signed
by Luke Metro.
So it's extra large. I don't know if it'll fit you, but you will win an Anduril t-shirt if you can do it in under 30 minutes. On your marks, get set, go, start your engines.
Send it.
He's going to be working on that while the show goes on. We're going to be bringing you the news, break it down. It looks pretty complicated, 600 pieces. We will see how he does. Okay, we will be checking in with him over the next half hour, over the next hour, letting you know how it goes. Anyway, let's read through some of this chime. Let's tell you about Figma first. Figma.com, think bigger, build faster. Figma helps design and development teams build great products together.
If
Honestly,
golden retrievers could design software, they would use Figma.
Absolutely. So let's go back to Chime. Chime Financial rose 37% in its trading debut after pricing its shares above the marketed range to raise $864 million in the year's sixth biggest U.S. IPO. That's great. The fintech firm shares opened at $43 after selling for $27 in the IPO, and they've been kind of trading around since then.
They're sitting at $34 a share at this point. So
so still up from
today,
up from 27, which is great. Accounting for employee stock options and restricted stock units, Chime has a fully diluted value of about $15.8 billion based on filings with the U.S. SEC. That fully diluted value is a sharp drop from the $25 billion valuation in a 2021 funding round at the peak of the tech boom. And so we've seen a lot of these companies that had higher marks during the zero interest rate era, but of course interest rates have gone up. That affects the value of future cash flows. It affects the value of tech companies in particular, but it's still important to get out, get liquidity, even if it's not at the high mark. Your LPs, you can distribute, they can choose what to do with it. Maybe they hold, because we've seen a lot of companies that go out at below the previous peak, but then they grind up because they have a lot to build off. And this isn't a situation where it's a company that's sneaking out at a $4 billion, SPAC or something. This is a true IPO in the tens of billions still. Seems pretty solid.
Yeah,
so
and there are still so many private neobanks that this is a very important sort of reality check on the market to understand how the market, the post-SERP era is really going to value these. There was another one that got out, I think that was called Dave. I'm actually curious to see how.
I know Dave. I know the founder.
You know the founder?
Dave
grinded up. At one point they were...
we had one of the founders on the show. He's working on that new Chrome. That was from Honey. Honey worked with another guy at Dave.
2 years ago, John.
Named John Wallen.
Dave was valued at $5 a share.
Yes.
Today it is valued at $200 a share.
Wow. Wait, what's the market cap?
So the market cap today is $2.78 billion. So it traded down. It was basically
sorry. Say the market cap again.
$2.78 billion.
2.7 billion. Wow. Yeah, it was down at like 30 million or something. And it was crazy because they had like 100 million in cash on the balance sheet. And I know someone who's a significant shareholder in that company, and it was like a really rough roller coaster because at one point it was worth a ton, and then it was worth nothing, and then it was back up.
Yeah, so it's still down 33% from its IPO.
But it's in a solid place to actually build back up. So wow, what a roller coaster.
What a ride. And you had to been very different businesses, but ultimately if you were a Chime investor, watching Dave in the public markets was not very fun. So the CEO of Chime said, "We don't focus on short-term fluctuation of the stock, even if it goes up today. I'm sure there's going to be other days that won't be as great." Fact check, true. We remain focused on the long term.
So the investors in Chime that are making money off this, DST Global, we know some folks over there, Crosslink Capital, Access Industries, General Atlantic, Menlo Ventures, Cathay Innovation, Iconic, and it sounds like Kirsten Green as well. Over at Forerunner made a bet.
Led the seed round of Chime.
Sean Carolyn, a Menlo Ventures partner and Chime board member, said he's relieved there was a reprieve in the markets following the tariff-induced volatility in April. That IPO window closed. We grabbed it back open. The IPO window. Out. I was thinking it would be very interesting to see a president run on a platform of just keeping the IPO window open permanently, mandating that it's open.
Yeah.
Legally.
Just create. We should. Normally I'm sort of against
maybe an amendment.
Big government.
Yeah.
Intervening. With the market. But in this case, I think sort of mandating that the IPO window should
is always
be open.
It should always be open.
You're really onto something here, John. Yep. You've always been very presidential, but
yes.
But I like
this
where you're
this
going
is a
with
winning
this.
platform. It'd be bipartisan, I think.
It's sort of like the opposite of the freeze the rent guy.
Yes.
Over in New York. So.
Yes. Freeze the IPO window open.
Freeze it open.
Freeze it open. All capital markets were like, holy cow, what does this mean? Carolyn said, noting that Chime delayed its IPO. The company's strong debut Thursday indicates that now the markets are healthy.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are very happy about that. They've never taken their eye off the mission.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Never attempted to chase the new shiny object.
Yeah.
Very good. What are you surprised by?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, we'll see if Chime, depending on what happens in Iran, market might see that positively if Chime could enter, bring neobanking to Iran.
That would be amazing.
Well,
I'm surprised by how
Iconic
yeah.
says they've never taken their eye off the mission. They were never tempted to chase the shiny new object. And yeah, they've seemed to be just...
Look at this murderer's row of IPO underwriters. You got Morgan Stanley, you got Goldman Sachs, you got JP Morgan, and 11 other banks worked on the offering. Let's hear it for investment banking.
The big investment banks.
They don't get enough credit, investment banks. They just work tirelessly.
If the stock pops,
where are the ticker tape parades for the analysts that stayed up all night working on this IPO? Anyway, Chime's marketing includes a deal with the NBA's Dallas Mavericks for its logo to appear on the team's jerseys. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Great. Anyway, let's tell you about Vanta. Vanta, automate compliance, manage risk, prove trust continuously. Vanta's trust management platform takes the manual work out of your security and compliance process and replaces it with continuous automation, whether you're pursuing your first framework or managing a complex program. Anyway, moving on. Big news. A whole bunch of tech leaders are now officially in the Army. So
the reserves.
Army
reserves.
Palantir Shyam Sankar joined the Army Reserves today. He broke it down in the Free Press. Also, Boz from Meta jumped in, honored to accept a direct commission as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve as part of the newly formed Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps, together with Shyam Sankar, Kevin Weil, and Bob McGrew. Our primary role will be to serve as technical experts advising the Army's modernization efforts. We've talked to the Secretary of the Army. They're very dedicated to bringing in technology and modernizing the entire fighting force. Very exciting, and it's awesome that these tech leaders and executives can get in there and start having an impact. So very, very accepting, very exciting. Boz says, I have accepted this commission in a personal capacity because I am deeply invested in helping advance American technological innovation. Nerd snipe, anyone care to venture a guess on why we called our detachment 201? 201, that's got to be an HTTP thing, right? HTTP 201.
201 is a personnel file in the Intel community.
Oh. I think it's an HTTP reference. So HTTP 201 created status code indicates that the HTTP request has resulted in the creation of a new resource. I don't know. That's my guess. Let me know what you think.
HTTP status code 201 means created according to @PokerChessMan.
That sounds like what it would be. Well, out with the 404s, in with the 201s. Congratulations to everyone involved. Bob McGrew says, this evening I will become an officer in the Army, U.S. Army Reserve, as part of Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps. I'm proud to have the opportunity to serve. Shyam Sankar also says, our mission is to help the Army transform for future missions and adopt bleeding-edge tech. America wins when we unite the dynamism of American innovation with the military's vital mission. This was the key to our triumphs in the 20th century. It can help us win again. Shyam came on the show. He told us about the $1 a year men. You remember this? Yeah. Talking about executives in business who could not be paid. They had to be paid a salary. They couldn't work for free. Right?
Armed forces,
to help with the war effort during World War II. And some of them worked incredibly hard, pivoting manufacturing lines to, you're making cars, now you're making Jeeps and tanks. Yep. And they worked really hard, and they made $1 a year because they legally had to make money.
You got to make something. This is good. We live in an unstable world. We want our brightest technologists to be allies and a part of our defense efforts.
Maybe we should get the Army on linear. It's a purpose-built tool for planning and building products, meet the system for modern software development, streamline issues, projects, product roadmaps. They have linear for agents. You know,
I don't think that was their original intention, but it would. Anywhere you're building software, you should be using linear.
Yeah. I should really join the Army Reserve and just be pitching SaaS products the entire time. just forward deployed BDR.
Yeah. Yeah, you do a great job.
I don't really know that much about implementing this stuff, but I can sell it.
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, we're trying to have a meeting about, modernization.
Not
here.
now, John.
And I'm like, well, sales tax on numeral? What about that?
If you put it on autopilot.
Anyway, congrats to Polymarket. They're putting up massive numbers in terms of visits in May.
Yeah, so they pulled data from SimilarWeb in May.
Yes.
Robinhood is sitting at 37.1 million hits. Coinbase at 34.7. Polymarket in third. So I think they're just pulling all the finance.
Finance and like kind of new, like these all lean like
investing.
Newer startup investing markets. But Kraken at 7 million, Pump Fund at 5 million. I would have assumed Pump Fund would be massive. But I mean, 5 million is nothing to shake.
I think crypto is still niche. It's still niche.
Prize picks at 3 million, Call Sheet at 1.
I see this, the reason that we were originally excited to partner with Polymarket is that it's an alternative to traditional news. It's a way to understand the headlines of the future today, or at least get odds against them. And so I think this signals that a lot of people are just going to Polymarket to understand the world. So congratulations to the whole team.
Yep. This was an interesting post by a friend of the show, Casey Handmer. I had no idea. It's a little bit dark, but he's talking about the ISS's structural integrities, quoting post from Christian Davenport, who says the Axiom 4 mission is postponed indefinitely while NASA and Roscosmos investigate a leak on the Russian side of the International Space Station. And so Casey says, the ISS's structural integrity is far more marginal than is being publicly discussed. We are having multiple and increasingly frequent leaks from heavily fatigued node segments in the Russian section.
John.
Yes.
This screams like the plot of a sci-fi movie.
It really does.
Leaks coming from the Russian section.
It's crazy.
Yikes.
When aluminum gets flexed, it fatigues and gets harder, increasing its tendency to crack. Cracks concentrate forces at their tips and spread over time. Multiple cracks have been discovered. There is no factor of safety associated with this failure mode. None of the structural pressure vessels are meant to crack. We are not even single fault tolerant on the structural integrity of the station. We could wake up tomorrow and find that with zero warning, it has failed catastrophically. Whether that means a leak slow enough to close some hatches, get the crew out, or at least into safer parts of the station, it's a roll of the dice. It could also depressurize in less than a minute. And Elon Musk says there are potentially serious concerns about the long-term safety of the International Space Station. Some parts of it are simply getting too old, and obviously that risk grows over time. Even though SpaceX earns billions of dollars from transporting astronauts and cargo to the ISS, I nonetheless would like to go on record recommending that it be deorbited within 2 years. Striking, very interesting. We got to put up a new one. We got to put up 10 of these. I know that they don't have that much economic value,
Space
but
yachts,
this is what
John.
I love. Yes, we need
turn it
a
into a
dozen
private
more
markets
ISS. I know that it's so expensive. I think it's one of the most expensive man-made objects ever built. Although maybe Stargate will beat it out. I seem to remember the ISS costing a total of $100 billion.
The thing with Stargate is it's a project that's happening across states.
Yes.
And so it's hard to say that it's the most expensive
much like the
object.
ISS's different modules put together. Oh, kind of
You get
similar.
the idea.
Yeah,
we could fit the ISS in a large enough warehouse.
Yes.
And fit Stargate
We
as a series of warehouses.
we have to have a human rated space station. It's just we have to have a space station. It's just so important.
I would like to see an Elon mega project.
I like that.
Building a space
There's that
yacht.
website. How many humans are in space? Have you seen this? Humans are in space right now. Whoisinspace.com. There are 13 humans in space right now. Who is in space? The ISS Crew 10 launched March 14th, 2025. There's 4 people there. There's the Soyuz. There's 3 people on there. Johnny Kim's up there. Wait, no way. You know Johnny Kim, right?
No.
Oh, Johnny Kim is a legend. So Johnny Kim.
Oh, yeah. This is the guy who
did
everything.
Yes, he's done everything.
He's
so
skill
Johnny
maxing.
Kim. Yes. So he was a Navy SEAL. He's a doctor, and he's also an astronaut. And the whole meme is like his parents are finally like proud of it because he did everything.
Yeah.
But it's like
I'm sure they still
Kim
want more.
Is the best. We should get him on the show from space.
Been up there for 66
people over there.
days.
And then Tiangong space station, the Chinese space station, has 3 astronauts on it, and then another 3 from a different mission. And so there's 6 over there, and then there's 7 on the ISS. And so we got 13. We need more. We need to be bringing this exponentially. I'd like to see them doing thousands.
More like Kai Cenat, like live streaming.
Yes,
daily.
totally.
I'm sure they get a little lonely and bored.
It's a content problem.
They got to be marketing.
Everyone's like, "Oh, you're running some scientific experiment. When are we going to do the paper?" That's boring. No,
they're like, Thank you for the $5,
exactly.
John Coogan.
Thank you for the $5.
They're like doing impressions and stuff like that.
If you donate 100, they'll squeeze the washcloth and show how the water sticks around. Let's check in on Tyler. Let's see how he's doing.
How we doing,
Tyler? Give us an update.
Pieces are black and the table's black,
so
it's quite hard to see.
Okay.
I don't know how far I am right now.
Okay.
Like
Good luck.
What time I'm at, but
he's at 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I can do it.
Okay. Keep going. He's working. Anyway, let's. We're releasing recap videos now. Roughly a 1-hour recap video of everything that happened on TBPN this entire week. We know we put out a lot of content for you. This week we'll be recapping WWDC. Apple released liquid glass. It was a little bit controversial. We talked to people that were very optimistic about the new design direction.
I think people settled down in their.
I think they eventually settled down
to themselves. All right, this thing might be pretty nice looking.
Yep.
It's probably will get pretty good, and we'll all move on. And
it also
they'll probably transition well to VR and other platforms.
Yeah, it also tied really well to Apple's kind of retreat. Ben Thompson wrote about this. Apple is turning over the reins to developers to develop some new AI applications. So we're very optimistic about that. We also had our intern, Tyler Cosgrove. He's making Legos right now. But on Monday, we had him assemble the first American iPhone from scratch. And by scratch, I mean 7 pieces that he had to kind of glue together. But he did it.
It was way more. Give him some credit. It was way more than 7.
Maybe 12. But it was fantastic. We had Andrew Huberman on the show. That was fantastic.
That's great.
We got to talk to him about what's going on with NIH budgeting. The proposal is that research funding will drop by 40%. We tried to dig into what pieces of the research budget should we keep. What is the dynamic between the different types of research that are funded, and he really broke it down for us on the back of his 4-hour interview with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is the current NIH director. That was a very fun interview. We also went to Y Combinator Demo Day 2025. We were live from San Francisco. We talked to dozens of teams, dozens of founders. We talked to high school dropouts, college dropouts, tons of AI agents. About 90% of the new YC class is AI driven. But we had a bunch of interesting conversations. We also talked to some venture capitalists there, and we shot a lot of confetti.
Where were all the hard tech founders?
We did not see many of them. There were a few, but we mostly
got
the AI deep dives.
They were among us.
And then we also discussed the Meta and Scale acquisition or investment. Meta is investing something like $15 billion. The deal actually just closed today. And so we had commentary from a number of founders and pundits and journalists and also venture capitalists talking about the nature of that deal and how it came together. And so we hope you enjoy this week's recap, and it gives you a good overview.
We're one away from being 7 days a week.
Yes, we're very close. We also have a great show for you today. We're having we already had Josh on the show, but we have 1X is coming on to talk about humanoid robots. We got Emily Sundberg coming on, the fantastic writer of the newsletter Feed Me. We have John Doyle from Cape building a new cellular network. There's a lot to talk about there. And then we have someone from the RAND Corporation coming on, which will be very fun. And so we will go back to the timeline, back to what people are talking about in the news. More updates on what's going on in New York. Zoran Mamdani is surging, continues to surge in the polls, and seems to be doing very well in the debates, but is not popular on tech Twitter because he says capitalism is theft. The quote is, "Taxation isn't theft, capitalism is." Zoran Mamdani could soon be mayor of the finance capital of the world. Incredible. It is a very odd choice for a city that is known for capitalism and finance.
And we will see how this one evolves. It is already a case study in marketing.
It is.
Signal called this out earlier this week, that he's just laser focused on a few key lines, and it is resonating with some. Certainly not our corner or our audience of capital enthusiasts.
Well, if you're a capital enthusiast, head over to public.com, investing for those who take it seriously. They got multi-asset investing, industry-leading yields, and they're trusted by millions. Let's go to Pavel. Pavel Asparuhov says, traditional company structure is falling apart. Pretty much every organization should be structured in 3 parts. People who sell things, people who do things, people who automate things. Everything else is just fat. Very interesting. Sellers, doers, automators. This kind of maps to, yeah.
I think this is, great insight ultimately resonates, but people who make things, is that people who sell things, people who make things, people who automate things?
Yeah,
people do things. Do things is just doing things.
Yeah, that is interesting that there's not. Yeah. The doing things part of this is the most vague, but maybe that's management and strategy and deciding what to do in the organization. But I do like the reframing as
people
like
make things, some people sell things. And
yes.
I
think maybe making things is better, but again, the automation thing seems like an interesting twist on a traditional engineering organization. As the role of the software engineer changes, it becomes more about automating any type of business process, and I think the role of the software engineer is definitely growing in scope. It's not it's vibe coding an internal tool using Cursor, Retool, or all the different softwares that are available. It's also buying off the shelf or bringing in off the shelf software to automate processes, and the leverage of the software engineer leads to just massive automation across the entire company. The selling things is very interesting because even though that is automated in some ways, it increasingly relies on
what's automated about a steak dinner. Exactly,
on interpersonal relationships and communication, and so that has definitely carved itself out as a unique function within the modern organization. But yes, I think the people who do things could be make things, but could also be define the strategy and build the company. But if you want to automate things, put your sales tax on autopilot with numeralhq.com. Spend less than 5 minutes per month on sales tax compliance.
Get on there.
And if you're one of those people that sells things, and if you're one of those people that sells things, get on ADIO, Customer Relationship Magic. ADIO is the AI native CRM that builds, scales, and grows your company to the next level.
It is the backbone of our high velocity guest program.
It is.
Get on there.
Chamath had a hilarious post that I really enjoyed. He says, "Well, this is probably one of the funnier things I've done, but my friend and sommelier and I got a California liquor license and started a wine collective. With our license, it allows us to buy wine directly from vintners, get wholesale pricing, buy and house entire collections of wine. We didn't do this just for us, but created it to allow our friends to participate as well. At some point, we may open it up to the world at large. If you love wine, want access to the best wines, and avoid retail markups, this may be a fit. The team charges for shipping and handling, but otherwise pass through the raw cost to our members. Right now, we're saving 15 to 40% per bottle, depending on the winery/vintage. We call it Drink With Me. We also create quarterly capsules of the best wines Josh and I have drank and allow members to buy in quantity. The first box is below." So it seems like he's like on the cusp of launching like a D2C wine company, but
yeah, I mean, this is a wine membership, wine club. There's thousands of these. People love them. Yeah. I think it makes sense for Chamath's creator evolution.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of his brand, like he's
always drinking wine on
always
all
drinking
in,
fantastic wines,
all in alone, and just casually dropping a little note about drink with me or whatever wine he's drinking could probably, drive this to 10,000 plus, subscribers.
I completely agree. The creator market fit here is fantastic.
Powerful.
Very fun. And if you zoom in, it says, Drink With Me, a curated wine collective by Chamath Palihapitiya and sommelier Joshua Plack. It looks great. And congrats. I mean, he has a passion for wine, and he's expressing it in a business. You love to see it.
Yes.
It's great. We talked a little bit about this, but we didn't get back into this. Scott Belsky came on the show this week, talked about the data wars, and there's new reporting from The Information. Salesforce is blocking enterprise AI rivals like Glean from using Slack data for their applications. This was a big issue back in 2012 with this idea that you had all this data in Facebook, you had all this data in Google, you had all this data with Apple, and you could not, even though every one of those companies would tell you, it's not our data, it's your data. You can take it with you. It's yours. You own your data. People would say, okay, that's great. Google, I'd like to give all of my data to Facebook because I want better ads on Facebook. Yeah. And Facebook, I want to give all my data to Google so that when I go in my Gmail, I can search my friends list. And both companies would be like, oh, no. We don't trust the other company. It's your data. You can export it through this CSV zip file that you have to download every time. But we're not just going to let an API link these two services.
Absolutely not.
Because the walled garden must be maintained.
Yes.
And it's like,
it's a beautiful garden. You have to appreciate the beauty of the garden.
It's my data. Then I can, integrate my iMessage with my Android friends. No, you couldn't possibly do that. And I mean, these big tech companies, they have reasonable arguments for it, but it always has been funny, and now it's more important than ever. And so Scott says, anticipated and referred to this as the impending data wars in previous editions of Implications. That's his newsletter that you should go subscribe to, but didn't expect it to start this quickly. Data grab and protectionism underway, especially by those that don't own their own graphs or sophisticated permissioning layers. And so, there's this big question. OpenAI is launching deep research. It integrates with Gmail and Google Docs. That's going to be fantastic. If they cut that off entirely and they get cut off, that might be something that actually drives enterprise adoption of Google's Gemini Deep Research project, right? Because if we have a whole bunch of documents in Google Drive and we want someone to be able to run a deep research report around all of our internal documentation, which obviously they would want to do, and Google successfully cuts off OpenAI, you're just going to have to go there, or else it's going to be a hassle of okay, I guess download all of our PDFs from Google Drive and then feed them into ChatGPT one at a time. No one's going to do that. The friction is going to be so high, even if you can download your data, it needs to be there over an API. And so Salesforce is taking the first shot in the data wars, and we'll be tracking it here on the show.
Shots fired.
For the next forever.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very timely call out from Scott on the show.
Yes, it was. If you're losing sleep over the data wars, you got to get on 8Sleep. Go to 8sleep.com/TBPN. Get an 8Sleep. How do you sleep last night, Jordy? I'm on a generational run. Put up huge numbers last night. I think I got you beat this whole week across. I think it's tied up. Monday 91, Tuesday 86, Wednesday was on the road, doesn't count. Thursday 91, Friday 95.
Wow.
Let's hear it for me.
I got completely mogged except tying you
soundboard
yesterday.
Not working. I was expecting some clapping, but the soundboard must be broken. Oh, there we go.
There you go. That's for you, John.
That's my favorite.
Hey,
95.
I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you.
Okay, yeah. You just throw up an excuse. I'm sure you have a good excuse. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. Let me hear it. Let me hear the excuse.
It actually was funny. I woke up a little late this morning because my son crawled into bed and basically pushed me so far off the edge of the bed that the 8Sleep alarm, the vibration alarm,
was waking him up instead of you.
He didn't even wake up. He was sleeping like a rock, but I was just feeling it very faintly.
Yeah.
So I woke up late.
My son hops in the bed after I leave, and I use the warm up alarm from 8Sleep, which is fantastic. It really makes it easy to get out of bed. But he loves it because he's like, oh, it's so warm and cozy, and then he just gets he sleeps an extra 2 hours because he likes it really warm.
Yeah.
And so he enjoys my post alarm side of the bed, enjoys that.
Very sweet.
Anyway, let's go back to the Army's newest recruits, tech executives from Meta, OpenAI, and more. The Wall Street Journal was covering it. Executives from Meta, Palantir, and OpenAI are joining a new Army Innovation Corps, bringing tech upgrades to the military. The tech reservists will serve 120 hours a year, so 2 hours, a little over 2 hours a week, as lieutenant colonels, advising on AI and commercial tech acquisition. Very exciting. And so I like this from Boz, Andrew Bosworth over at Meta. He says, it's possible I watched too much Top Gun. He's 43, standing more than 6'2".
Happens to the best of us.
It does. You can never watch too much Top Gun. Come on, Boz. It's an amazing movie. He was told he was too tall to realize his youthful ambitions of flying an F-16 fighter jet.
Did that happen to you too?
It was never even in the conversation.
Really?
I remember seeing a movie about the Vietnam War when I was 13, and it was very obvious that I was never going to make it in the military. But there was someone from my high school, and I do have a family member who's flying F-16s, and it seems like it's a wonderful program. It instills incredible. You
really have to be a very specific specimen to be a pilot.
Yeah.
I did flight lessons as a kid, and I was in the civil what's it called? Civil Air Patrol, and I was really worried as a kid. I wanted to be a pilot, and I was worried that my eyesight would degrade because you can't have glasses, you can't have LASIK or anything like that. You just got to have perfect eyesight. You got to be very specific height. And anyways.
Yeah. Bosworth went on to say, there's a lot of patriotism that has been under the covers that I think is coming to light in the Valley. I completely agree. They will be sworn in as uniformed officers in a public ceremony on Friday, the day before the Army's 250th birthday. Happy birthday to the Army. Happy birthday. Less than a decade ago, even working on technology that might be used in defense, never mind suiting up for service, was anathema in Silicon Valley. The new reserve program reflects how the relationship between the Pentagon and the tech industry has deepened. Meta and OpenAI adjusted their policies to work more with the military last year, although Meta is not technically a defense contractor right now. They are a supplier to a defense contractor with their annual partnership. Little bit of confusion there. That story went out and it was so fast, a lot of people didn't understand. They're not of an official military contractor at this point. Although I would love if they were. Palantir has been involved in national security work for 2 decades. It has an AI and data project with the Army worth potentially more than $1 billion. For the Army, the deepening ties can prepare for wars of the future. They are expected to be waged in part with ground robots and drones, and rely on networks of sensors and artificial intelligence to coordinate it all.
Looking at the conflict from yesterday in Iran, that feels like, in many ways, the future of warfare. Zero troops deployed. And, absolute devastation.
Well, speaking of robots, we're going to have the founder of 1X on the show in just 5 minutes. But in the meantime, let me tell you about AdQuick, out-of-home advertising made easy and measurable. Say goodbye to the headaches of out-of-home advertising. Only AdQuick combines technology, out-of-home expertise, and data to enable efficient, seamless ad buying across the globe. Go to adquick.com. Anyway, Shyam Sankar took to the Free Press to write a little bit of I guess this is an op-ed or a little article about his experience. He says, I am the CTO of Palantir. Today, I joined the Army. He says, my father grew up in a mud hut in India. America gave him and me a life. Now technologists like me need to give back. Oh, this is heartwarming. Fantastic article.
Does he have a GigaChad filter on here? I love the best bit.
Fantastic.
This is your new bit. If you need a bit going into the weekend, if you see a picture of your
absolute
boy, and they don't, and they clearly, just a casual filter, accuse them of using a GigaChad filter. I mean,
he looks like he's in shape.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that without bringing out the Glazinator 3000. Later today, Triple Glaze. Receiving their commissions on my side will be some of the most impressive minds in the world of technology. Kevin Weil, the chief product officer at OpenAI, Andrew Bosworth, Boz, the chief technology officer at Meta, and Bob McGrew, formerly the chief research officer at OpenAI and engineering director at Palantir. None of these men need to pad their resumes. None of them have free time between fatherhood demanding day jobs and a dozen other demands. Are they all dads? Let's hear it for fatherhood. Let's go.
Let's go. I mean, we got 50% of this group on the show already.
We got it. We got to finish it out. We were close with Boz. We almost overlapped at some event. We're gonna make it happen. We almost caught him at Figma Config. We're gonna get him on the show. Let's make it happen. A decade ago, it would have been unthinkable for so many tech heavyweights to openly align with the U.S. military. Equally, it would have been out of character for the military to enlist the support of the nation's business elite, much less create a special corps that they could deploy their technical talents in service of the government. But a sea change has taken place. Wars in Europe and Middle East, and above all, the threat of war in the Pacific, have focused the national mind and initiated a scramble for mobilization. Exploding pagers and long-distance drone strikes from shipping containers prove that technology has once again changed the battlefield. Our military has to change with it. The Army's Executive Innovation Corps, under the direction of the Army's Chief of Staff, General Randy George, who has been on the show, is part of a larger effort by our military to transform the way it prepares for and fights wars in the 21st century, marrying the nation's most innovative private companies with our most important military missions is fundamental to that effort. That cooperation relies on reviving a sense of duty in an American elite that has become disconnected from our nation and its tradition of service. Let's check in with our intern and his tradition of service. How is it going, Tyler?
Servicing
this
Lego.
He's 75% of the way there.
Minutes, this is much harder than I thought.
Well past 30
well
minutes.
past 30 minutes. Okay, well,
so we got to start thinking of the punishment. You don't get a prize. No. You don't get a prize for.
What's a good
I have a really good one.
What is it?
I have a really good one.
I know what you're thinking of,
and it's actually a bit. No, you don't. You actually don't.
Oh, okay.
Because I was going to give this to you as a
give
gag.
It to me?
The thing that I'm imagining was going to be a gag gift for you.
Okay.
But now I'm going to sort of
flip it around,
convert it into a punishment for Tyler.
Are you going to drop it right now? What is it?
It's on the way here. It was in the car, and and Ben's going to drop it here in the next few minutes. So we might have to wait till after the next guest, but you can look forward to that.
Yeah, we didn't tell you, but if you'd been able to get it done in 10 minutes, we would have gotten you a fantastic new watch on bezel. We had our finger hovering over the Patek Philippe Nautilus, but that's kind of out of the window.
Would you have worked faster, Tyler, if you knew
that there was a Nautilus on?
You should have told me.
On the board. Your bezel concierge is available now to source you any watch on the planet. It'll have to be next time, but in the meantime, if you're listening, you can go to getbezel.com.
We should treat this Lego set as sort of something that he can kind of iterate against. You don't just do a Rubik's Cube once. Like you do it once, you try to do it faster, etc.
Break it down.
And so I think we should give Tyler another crack at the Nautilus.
Yes.
And now that he's dialed in, he should be able to do it a lot faster. So, Dylan, why don't you bring this up for a second?
Okay, this is the potential punishment. What are we doing here, Jordy? Okay.
I was gonna give this to you, John, because you're a horse-sized human.
Yes.
These are the Appledex apple-flavored electrolytes for horses.
Can we play the horse noises?
It's from Horse Health Products.
Horse Health Products.
It's a 40-day supply for all classes of horses.
Show it to the single.
And I'm just gonna go out. Tyler, your punishment is you have to finish this before your internship ends this summer. It's totally safe for humans.
It is.
So it's 40-day supply for a regular horse.
Okay.
So
let's see how long it takes you.
You got to see how long you get through it. Anyway, so you have this waiting for you after the show. And we could do something if you finish the next one, the next iteration, if you do it in 30 minutes, maybe you don't have to have it, but you might try it and discover that you actually love it. So we'll see.
Okay. Tyler's still working on that. We'll check in with him. He does have 2 hours. We have another hour of guests coming into the studio. We have 1X coming up next, talking about humanoid robots. But I'm excited for this.
They've had a massive week.
And I have a ton of questions about humanoid robots. The biggest question is data, that sim to real gap. There was something percolating in my mind related to the Alex Wang acquisition, the Scale AI acquisition of Meta, because robotics data is so difficult to get. Maybe Scale AI would play in that market. We'll see where that develops. But in the meantime, let's bring in the founder of 1X and start talking to him about humanoid robots. How you doing?
There he is. What's happening?
Welcome to the stream.
Doing good. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Fantastic.
Give us some context on your background on 1X and Neo, and then we'll just get into a bunch of different questions. I was about to tell John Neo was actually blessed by Lil B, the bass god.
I saw
a while
that.
ago, much
Fantastic.
like Timothée Chalamet was before the generational run. So it's very possible that Neo is on a similar run itself.
I'm very excited.
So anyways, great to have you on, Bernt, and give us some color.
Awesome. No, and I think like let's see. Thank you, Neo.
Whoa, hey Neo.
Over here.
Wow.
Okay.
That's convenient.
But I do think there has to be something to it, right? It's been going pretty well lately. So we have been blessed.
Okay. You've clearly made one. How many have you made of these things?
It's about 100.
100. Wow. Okay.
Different versions though, right? They're not still all operational. Like we're very quickly cycling through hardware revisions to ensure we actually get to the launch by end of year. So we do quickly deprecate them as new ones come out.
Sure. What does launch mean? You want to be able to sell these to companies? This is business to business, business to consumer. I've seen them on streams. They seem like kind of just like companions. It's less industrial, but what's your thesis for the early adopter here?
Yeah, let me just jump in straight into it. So like, who am I? Who's the company? What are we doing? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So I'm Bernt. I'm the founder, CEO. Come to this from a robotics background. Been on this journey all my life. Picked apart all of my mom's kitchen appliances since they had motors when I was a kid. Always liked building stuff, programming. Started 1X 10 years ago, and like the mission stayed pretty constant. We want to create an abundance of artificial labor. And we're doing this through creating these intelligent machines that can live and learn among us. And that last part is so important. I think what really differentiates 1X from the rest of the pack here is the focus on making robots that are safe among people and that are very affordable. Right? First principles engineering. How do you make something that's like super lightweight, doesn't need very special raw materials, doesn't need like that high tolerances in manufacturing, make something that's like closer to a refrigerator than a car, but still as capable as a human. And when I say getting this out the door, what I mean is literally like getting it into your homes, right? So we're going through in-home testing among employees now. I have one in my house in Redwood. It's amazing to get to finally live with the product. And there's going to be some customers having them quite soon, but like under NDA early testing. And then if we play our cards right, it should be in the main market by end of year. That's the goal.
Wild, moving quick. How has the company evolved since 10 years ago? Humanoids have always been in people's minds to some degree. They haven't been in the headlines as much as they've been, let's say, in the last couple years, but kind of walk us through maybe those different stages, how your vision evolved, and then I have a bunch of other questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of product that we all know will happen, right? And we've known it for like, I don't know, last 50 years. Like at some point this will happen. And the impact is tremendous, right? So I think what's really changed the last couple of years is, to be very blunt, that it works. For the first 8 years, it was kind of a grind. And it's the kind of a problem that's really worth just like doubling down on like grinding and pushing on until it works. And I don't think the impact of this type of technology can be exaggregated, right? We're years, not decades now away. It's very hard to like put a specific date, but we're years, not decades away from robots building robots, robots building out our data centers, our energy infrastructure, our chip manufacturing, like our mining, in general, like this kind of hard takeoff moment, right? Where we can actually get to an abundance of artificial labor. And it doesn't really even matter if it's like physical or digital, right? Because once you have this engine running, you will just in general like have extremely intelligent agents, whether they're in the digital or physical space, and kind of will redefine what it means to be human. Like, what do we value in humans? Like, how do we see our own worth? And I'm just really freaking lucky to be alive, right? To be part of that. It's been my dream all my life. And
yeah, the timing's amazing.
What
about getting into more specifics with Neo? Do you have any sort of specific early use cases that you're focused on in all of the sort of marketing that I've seen so far? It hasn't seemed to focus on certain use cases like manufacturing, or certainly not mining or things like that. It feels like you're maybe more, focused on the home. Is that correct? Am I off?
No. It's correct, but it's really important there to point out that, like, if you take a step back, right? It's like we're years, not decades, away from actual abundance of artificial labor. So as a company, the only thing that makes sense here is to get there as quickly as possible. It's all we care about. What's the shortest path? So we're not a consumer company. We're the shortest path to artificial labor. And it just happens to be that the shortest path is through consumer. Because you need to live and learn among people. Like, if it's one thing that's incredibly clear in AI, it is that the diversity, or like the variance in your data set, basically equals your intelligence, right? That's where intelligence emerges from. And in a factory, there just isn't enough diversity. Think about it, like, if you're in a factory all your life, moving something from A to B, and that's all you're doing, then, like, you could ask, like, okay, how much do you actually learn, right? And we actually have the answer. You learn about, we need like 20 to 30 hours of data from that, and then we don't learn anything more.
Interesting.
So, like, that's just like, that's not where to deploy robots. We want to deploy robots there, but we have to deploy them first where we actually get the data that gets you through a truly intelligent machine that doesn't just repeat a motion. It understands deeply the task it's doing. And this brings you into, like, something interesting that you said in your intro here, which is companionship, right? Because everything we do is social. Like, work is social. Like, whenever you do something, usually it's because of someone wants something, and usually someone's next to you, or even like communication, the social context of objects. Like, hey, is this cup on the table someone using it? Is it yours? Like, is it half full, half empty? Is it dirty? Like, there's liquid in it. But if it's coffee and it's cold, it's probably, like, not in use anymore. It's actually dirty. Like, everything has this, like, social context. And this is what creates this incredible variance and diversity in the home. Not only is every home different, but, like, everything happening in the home is different every day. And everything has a social context. So I think we're seeing pretty strong proof now that, like, a lot of model intelligence comes from this diversity. And we really want to double down on that. And then the other part is, I think it's just going to be incredible to live with these companions in our life that can not only give us back time in our everyday life with, like, household chores, but actually be a trusted friend, right? And we're talking to our phones with chatbots and being like, these are our new companions, but it's not the right interface, right? The right interface is something that you can really deeply connect with, and that gets you away from a screen.
It's like Bicentennial Man, a movie I know you haven't seen, but is a fantastic story of a humanoid robot that stays with the family for 200 years and evolves and changes. And Robin Williams, it's a beautiful movie. I want to talk to you about kind of the progression of the software. Teleoperation, super valuable in a bunch of different ways. Simulation, we're seeing lots of promising data. There's the sim to real gap. There's deterministic algorithms for walk cycles. There's end-to-end systems. What is your view on the path that we need to go down to get to something that's truly generalizable so that you can put a humanoid robot in a completely novel situation, just talk to it and say, hey, clean up this table, and it will remove all of these cans one at a time. It knows exactly how to do it, and it's never actually been trained on that specific task, but it can generalize just like any other human can?
I think, like, there's two interesting answers. The first one is no one knows how to solve that yet. And then the second answer is we actually know really well how to solve that, which is it's going to be some big transformer, and you just need enough high quality data. Okay. So we kind of know, like, it's an engineering problem at this point, because even though we don't know the exact solution, we know what we need, right? We just need an enormous amount of relevant data. And this data is very different. All models that you see today, they're trained on what I call, like, only observations. So if you think about the internet, whether it's video or pictures or text or whatever, it's static, right? So you're like, given that I saw or read this, what's the next thing? But what you're actually missing, and where, in my opinion, like, a lot of, like, our ability to reason comes from, is that you have some hypothesis about what's going to happen. Like, you have your own mental model of, like, this conversation. So when you're saying something, if I'm training just on what you're saying, that's not the same as if I'm training on what you were thinking and planning, and then what you said, and then what the result of that was with respect to, like, how I reacted to that. And robots actually allow you to do this. right? Because you have what the robot is thinking and what it was planning to do, what it actually did, and what it resulted in. And this data is what is needed to get to this. And that's what we're gathering at scale.
There's
so it becomes like an
there's no real like massive data set like the web that you can just scrape. Folks are using teleoperation to generate data. There's simulation data. Like, what are the richest sources of data for you? What do you see as being like the real trove that you're going to be doubling down on over the next few years?
I think it's all of them, but they're all just like a crutch. It's like you're bootstrapping your way to where robots are learning in the real world.
Yeah.
And this is really the direction we're moving in, because teleoperation does not scale, right?
Yeah.
It's super valuable and we need it, but it doesn't scale. Simulated data, very useful for simple things like walking, but for like peeling a shrimp or whatever, right? It's like, it's not nearly detailed enough. Like, it doesn't work. So what you need is to use the internet data, some teleoperation, simulation, synthetic data, all of these things to get to where your model is able to sometimes succeed. So when you say, get me a Coke in the fridge, maybe there's a 50% chance that a robot comes back with a Coke.
Yeah.
Maybe it gets stuck somewhere on the way, it didn't manage to do so. But once this happens, then you can basically just tell it, hey, good job, or like, hey, weren't you supposed to get me a Coke, if it's just, I don't know, staring out the window instead. And that's the data loop that scales, right? And that's what we're deploying. So when we're saying like getting this into your home, what we mean is almost more like adopt a Neo to help us teach it. It's not going to do everything in your home day one. We're not there yet. But we're able to deliver a product that is really fun, very engaging, somewhat helpful, and really the ability to be part of this generational journey from the beginning, right? That's the product. And that's how we gather that data. And this comes back to how we design robots that are safe. Because if you want the robots to actually be learning in the real world, they need to be safe, not just with respect to you, but with respect to itself and your environment, right? You don't want your kitchen to look like a robot had been ravaging around there when it's done. You want your kitchen to look nice, just like it did before the robot went there, even though the robot failed a few times at opening
the challenge is you don't have the luxury of hallucinations long term. Like if the robot is unloading the dishwasher and puts a bunch of knives in the wrong cupboard, that's like, that's not safe, right? Like if you have, kids at home and, so it's like the bar for acceptable is very high.
I want to ask about the supply chain. Dylan Patel was on the show saying that no matter what happens with humanoid robotics, all the parts are going to be made in China. There were some actuator startups in the comments saying like, that's not true. We're going to build it here. We're going to fix the supply chain. What's your view on the short, medium, and long term of the robotic supply chain?
And you know how to ask the hard questions. Let's start by saying, to us, this has been all about how do you don't like over constrain the system too early, right? So humanoid robots don't exist at scale yet. So like if we were making a car, if my new startup was a car, I would clearly utilize the existing supply chain.
Of course.
What we've done is we've made everything ourselves. And when I say literally here, like, I mean, we're undergoing some patenting process for a new type of die casting of aluminium at the same time that we're launching AI models. So we're like definition of vertically integrated, including all the manufacturing technology. That puts us in a position where we can actually kind of manufacture anywhere. It just depends on access to raw materials, power, and general like tariffs and everything else. We are actually building a factory in the US right now. There are challenges because like sourcing simple things in quotes like copper, aluminium, steel, these kind of things in the US, for example, is a lot more expensive than in China. Logistically, it's also kind of like a nightmare because you don't have kind of like the economic zones with like basically your metal refinery sits next to your forge. And there's like pros and cons, but I think there's a path. I think what's the most important here to realize is that when people talk about like things need to be built in China, we're not necessarily talking only about this. We're talking about actual access to knowledge about how to do manufacturing. And I think that is the thing that takes the longest to kind of onshore, right? So sure, there are things that need to happen with rare earths. There's things that need to happen with all these things. But I think the main thing to really work on also is just making sure that people understand how incredibly exciting manufacturing is. And make sure that our new generation actually really wants to work on the hard problems in manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to the author of Apple in China, and he really reframed the conversation about Apple's impact in China, not just as being a buyer, but actually being an educator in China and sending over massive teams of manufacturing designers to create a supply chain that didn't even exist, but was enabled by the scale of the population and the economic zones and everything you articulated. So I'm optimistic that in a new boom, you could potentially set up trade deals such that, if your business is scaling, you would have the choice to create a new generation of manufacturing engineers in America or anywhere else that might be advantageous. But this has been fantastic. I'd love to have you back and go way deeper. Jordy, you have a last question?
Congrats on all the new launches this week. Excited to follow you and the whole team's work. It's been awesome to see.
It was great talking to you guys, and stay tuned. There's actually more coming.
Amazing.
Wow.
I can't wait.
Coming in a couple of days.
And we'll pull up another chair for Neo whenever you're ready. We'll adopt. We'll happy to
adopt one.
Yeah.
Bring us another energy drink. Thank you so much for joining. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, Bernt.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Next up, we have John Doyle from CAPE coming in the studio, talking to us about wireless networking, cellular technology. Very excited to talk to him, especially with the backdrop of what happened in Ukraine 2 weeks ago. Anyway, welcome to the studio, John. Good to have you here. How are you doing?
Hey guys, happy to be here. I'm doing great.
Thanks so much for joining. Would you mind kicking us off with a little bit of introduction of yourself and the company, maybe, to get us started?
Yeah, you bet. I'm John Doyle, founder and CEO of CAPE.
Mm-hmm.
It is America's privacy-first mobile network.
Mm-hmm.
2 sentences on my background because it explains how I came to start this company. I started my career in the Army Special Forces as a communications sergeant on a 5th Special Forces group. Went to Palantir. I was there for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at Palantir, I started in technical roles. I wound up running the national security business for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I learned about this whole, PhD field of study worth of vulnerabilities that exist on the global cellular network. And I'm really passionate about solving them. And so I started CAPE in 2022 to get after that problem.
What is the biggest concrete risk to the cellular network? Is it like?
Well, I would just start at a higher level.
Please.
Is it how unsecure is the average cellular network?
Completely. We saw, if you remember during the last campaign, the story came out about J.D. Vance's phone calls being listened to.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it that kind of came and went as these stories do. But it snowballed into the story about Salt Typhoon, which the headline of that story is China has just explicitly and completely infiltrated all the major telcos in the United States.
Wow.
Which is pretty bad. But even before you get there, there are all these, they're really features that are baked into the protocols that run the network. They're there for good reason. But in the hands of malicious actors, some really bad effects can be drawn out of them. And so, we can get deep in the technical weeds if you want to, but basically the whole thing is blown. And it's problematic because we are entirely reliant and kind of fundamentally reliant on the cellular network.
Yeah. What's a bigger risk right now, espionage or sabotage?
That's a really good question. I'm going to say espionage because it is being it's absolutely happening right now. The Vance story is a perfect example of that, right? And just listening to the future vice president's phone calls. Although the sabotage question is interesting, I know you guys want to talk about or have been talking about spiderweb a bunch and the drone attacks. One of the really interesting features of that story, of course, from our perspective, is the fact that the drones were piloted on using commercial cellular connection.
Totally.
Which is really interesting to us in a bunch of ways. But importantly, and it came out a bunch in the reporting, when people start to think about countermeasures and how would we guard against these attacks in the future, one option that gets taken off the table almost immediately is turning off the cellular network.
Yep.
Right? Because it has disastrous consequences, right?
Yeah, because what if someone needs to call 911 and they can't? Something like that. You're going to wind up hurting people.
Impacts.
Yeah, totally.
When there's an AT&T outage, stuff grinds home, right?
Yeah. I mean, we saw it yesterday with just like a Cloudflare outage, and it was very disruptive. Talk to me about how you actually go about building a new network. Are you able to solve the problems that you're trying to solve just by piggybacking on the existing physical hardware, or is this a crazy capex problem that we're going to see you raising $1 trillion in debt and stuff? You could probably do that based on your background, but I'm always interested to know where you think like the right problem to solve is.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we didn't know the answer to it when we started the company. Thankfully, it turns out you don't need to build the towers, you don't need to own the antennas or the spectrum.
Got it.
Our approach is we own all the software that runs the network, so we control application, billing, call routing, messaging, have all of the important stuff, and we've done pretty extensive red teaming and testing, especially with government partners, and proven out that if you own all the software, you can actually make a lot of progress against the problem.
Very cool. So when I see one of those cell phone towers, that might not be a Verizon tower specifically. That might be owned by a different company that then is like leasing or running software for Verizon and AT&T within the same kind of like, you could think of it almost like a multi-tenant data center. Is that the right mental model when I see a cell phone tower?
Yeah, and that's a great, it's a really good observation, and it turns out to be true.
Okay.
The carriers, what the carriers own is spectrum, right? What Verizon owns is an amazing amount of spectrum that's super expensive, and they administer it. They don't even, you're right, they don't even own the towers most of the time. I mean, like American Tower or some other company builds the tower, oftentimes puts the radio on there, or the carriers will sign an agreement with Nokia or Ericsson to put the antennas up there. And oftentimes the carriers don't actually run the radios, they outsource that to Nokia and Ericsson. And so they have sort of assumed this system integrator role. And I think my personal opinion is that has serious security implications, has led to some of the problem that we find ourselves in.
Sure. Can you get me up to speed on 5G? I remember the drama around Huawei, and they had built 5G towers that we were not going to buy. I also heard someone mention offhand that America doesn't really have 5G. We have like fake 5G or something. Is there
is it all really marketing?
Is it marketing? Because, you're like, don't talk about it.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so there's two things there. First, you're teeing up one of my favorite history lessons, which is 20 years or so ago, 23 years ago, China made the strategic decision to capture as much footprint on the global cellular network as possible. And the way that they achieved that was by pumping billions of dollars of subsidy into Huawei, so that Huawei could run around the world and sell antennas and also core software, the software that runs the network, at half or less of the price of any of their competitors. And so it became really attractive, and everyone went out and bought Huawei gear. And the result was that China now owns, still not in the US so much anymore, but around the world, a huge percentage of the footprint on the network. At almost exactly the same time, the US, and it's not obviously a different kind of government, so it wasn't like a centrally made decision, but US telecom started outsourcing and offshoring all of the technical aspects of running the business. So, the core software now is built by Nokia or Ericsson, which are in Europe, and very little of that capacity exists within the United States. So while China's making all these really deep and recurring investments in the infrastructure, the US is really kind of divesting and just becoming these system integrator spectrum managers. And that's how we find ourselves in this imbalance now. And that when people talk about the race for 5G and how is the US positioned with respect to China, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to say it's 5G, because they're not talking about when 5G first started to get buzzy, the use cases were always like a heart surgeon in Boston is going to be doing surgery in Africa, right, because of the low latency protocols. And that stuff is cool, but that's not like how we're behind China. How we're really behind China is just in how much footprint do we own, how much access, how much control do we have over the network. And that's actually agnostic of which generation, or it's independent of what generation we're on. And then are we really on 5G is such a good question. There's
I think about it mostly from a bandwidth perspective. Like I became able to stream HD video at like Retina resolution, and I really don't have a daily use case that goes beyond that in terms of bandwidth needs, right? And so as long as, but every once in a while I notice if I'm about to take off on a plane and I know I want to download a movie right before, the difference between fast for downloading like a full gig in 2 minutes and 20 minutes is material. And so that's where I would think 5G would help, but I've also heard about like streaming video games, obviously 4K stuff, but I don't feel the pain that much that I'm not a single issue voter on the topic, but I am curious.
You're like, I mean, that observation is a threat to the entire like telecom. like 3G to 4G was way better, right?
Oh, totally. It was night and day. Yeah.
They're better, more secure. And 4G to 5G was arguably better, although not entirely, because like 5G connection drains the battery on your phone a lot faster.
Interesting.
You know, there's some trade-offs there where LTE times that 4G is actually like a better option in some cases. But beyond that, like the hurry up and download a movie use case, there's kind of nothing left. And so there's a big shrug in the industry. People are kind of waving their hands at AI, like, well, we're going to do AI and that'll change everything. But I don't know that comes into it.
Everything's an S-curve. It's all sigmoid. We saw mobile bandwidth growing exponentially. Everyone was like, you're going to be able to download 10 exabytes in 2 seconds. And in fact, it was a sigmoid function, like it always is.
I think you've nailed the use case. It's like, as long as I can stream Netflix at maximum resolution, I'm done. Like
I'm done.
That's the
who is the core customer that you're going after? Is it people in important positions, politicians, CEOs, et cetera?
It's just JD Vance.
Just JD Vance.
Just one customer, massive client.
$1 billion contract. Hey, you should be able to get a $1 billion ARR contract. No, but when I think about the broad consumer market, people say they want privacy, but in
a lot of people just
reality,
want $20 instead of $30, right?
Yeah, I mean, both those consumers exist in the market. There are a lot of people. Mint Mobile perfected the like, how cheap can you offer a cell plan, right? And they nailed it. It's $20 a month turns out to be the answer. Right?
Ryan Reynolds, undefeated. I love the man.
When you have unlimited free marketing from Ryan Reynolds, you win any game. So who are we trying to solve problems for? I mean, I like my background in special operations. I am deeply passionate about the fact that cellular phones have been a part of the battlefield for as long as we've had cellular phones, and they are increasingly, not decreasingly so, over time. We saw this in Ukraine. Like the entire Ukraine war is fought on the mobile network, at least communications aspects of it. And I'm deeply passionate about building technology that keeps people doing that work safe, right? I think that's like a really important mission, and I love it. And that is where we started when we were thinking about the product and starting to like build early versions and build early features. That was the market. But we always had in mind, and in my early life, I was a special operations soldier. In my later life, I'm a parent, and and I, even in my sort of relatively mundane parental, mid-40s existence, I have worries about how reliant I am on my cell phone and the trade-offs I'm making, and things like SIM swaps. If you know what SIM swaps are, that's huge. Right? And you have to build technical solutions to problems like that. And I have also like a general sense of indignation that if I want to be a subscriber to any traditional telco, I give away all of my personal information, and then they lose it like clockwork 4 to 5 times a year.
They really do.
They're giving it away.
Internet. Like it doesn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't be that way.
Well, thank you for your service, both in the military and as a father. It's very important. We got to get you Ryan Gosling. I think Ryan Reynolds went with Mint Mobile. We get you Ryan Gosling.
There's something there. There's something there.
This is fantastic.
Well, now you're our chief mobile correspondent now.
Yeah. I mean, do you have anything else, or should we let him go?
No, this was great.
Thank you so much for hopping on. This is fantastic.
I think there's going to be. I'm sure there'll be more stories this year.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on.
Give some deeper insight.
But we'll let you get back to it.
Important work.
Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers, Sean.
We'll talk to you soon. Let's quickly tell you about Wander.
Find your happy place. Find your happy place.
Book a Wander with inspiring
I love that when
views,
I point, I can double
amenities,
point.
dreamy beds, top tier cleaning,
24/7.
Yeah, it's so good. There we go. Top tier cleaning, 24/7 concierge service. It's a vacation home, but better. Yesterday, I got a little spicy on the timeline. I said vacation. I said traveling is overrated. I wasn't talking about vacations.
What are you running
I love
from?
Staycations. I love getting to wander in my hometown in something I can drive to. Load up the entire family. Load up the dogs. Drive out to a wander. Hit Joshua Tree. Hit Malibu.
Marathons and travel.
There's no reason you need to go outside the country to enjoy a beautiful wander. Although, if traveling is your ticket, go.
Well, that's the beauty of Wander.
It is.
All over the U.S.
Let's check in with our intern, Tyler Cosgrove. Let's
Tyler,
see
how we
he's
doing?
Well, I'm very close.
Okay.
But this has been kind of a disappointment. I'm extremely slow right now. I mean, I thought I would have been done 30
Are
minutes
your
ago.
hands aching?
you
Are your
sweating?
fingers breaking?
I'm sweating.
Oh, sweating. Okay. Well, you're an
Running
hour and
out
a
of
half
time,
in.
but if you're sweating a lot, you should try these Apple Dex apple flavor forced electrolytes.
I didn't
let's get him
tell-
let's get him a cup.
Let's get him
at
a
least.
cup, get him some electrolytes, make sure he's hydrated. I didn't tell Tyler this, but I took a picture of the Lego kit and I asked ChatGPT, how long will this take? It said between 2 and 4 hours. And then he was like, I can do it in 30. And I was like, okay, good luck. Anyway, we have our next guest in the studio, Emily Sundberg, the writer of the fantastic Feed Me
The daily newsletter about the spirit of enterprise.
Really?
Isn't that
Is
an
what it's
incredible
called?
line?
That's an
That feels like a
incredible
line
Welcome
we
to
would
the
use.
stream. How you doing,
Welcome to
Emily?
the show.
I'm
What's
so
up,
glad to have you
everyone?
on.
I'm happy to be here. Everyone, all two of you.
Yes.
Yes, all of
We
us.
have our intern
We have our
Tyler
intern
over
here
there
working on a
assembling
Lego
Legos.
set.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, Emily being a guest, I've gotten more random texts about it. People
yeah?
being like, "Oh, you should ask her this. Oh, you
Oh,
should ask
really?
her
That's
that."
great, yeah.
People have
hot
are paying
commodity.
attention.
Is that a Google
Wow.
shirt?
Exciting. That's scary.
That's amazing. Well, what is your shirt? Let me see.
Oh,
If you stand up.
I was at
Apple.
Apple. I was
Very
at
cool.
WWDC on Monday. And
Yeah, you were reporting on what the really old folks are thinking about Apple, right? Is that what they said?
Yeah.
I saw the backlash.
The people over at Puck said that
That's what it was.
that Apple should have invited younger people. To cover it.
Wow.
Wow. Well,
I'm
wait,
30.
but
I'm a
before we,
little too old.
yeah, before we go to, is it true that Tim Cook begged for a selfie?
Oh yeah, we
Oh
saw
yeah,
that.
yeah, totally. No, that was really fun. That was
That's
cool.
very
I didn't
great.
expect that to happen.
Yeah.
What was your reaction? It feels like a lot of the liquid glass hate has blown over by now. People, like most.
Yeah, I think like sitting there in real time, reading Twitter and seeing people's reactions, it seemed like people weren't excited and wanted more Apple intelligence updates. But that night I went to, have you guys ever been to WWDC?
No, never.
I went to one of those like ancillary engineer and developer barbecues like an hour away in an Airbnb with like 30 guys who build apps, and they were all really excited. So I think they're the people who it's for, and they're the people who are going to ultimately be using these updates, and they seemed thrilled about it. So
Yeah, it was a developer conference, and they actually announced a lot of exciting things around developers.
Yep. And it also
specifically
seemed like they
doing-
ceded some territory in the AI world that could potentially enable more AI apps to be owned by independent developers, which is a huge boon for the ecosystem.
Did you get to press Tim Cook on the Photos app at all? Are you a Photos app enjoyer?
I had about 14 seconds with him, and Will Welch was before me. So it was like,
not a lot of time.
Yeah.
Next year.
Next year.
Awesome. I have a bunch of other random questions to go through.
Please, Jordan, hit it.
I want to ask about the state of Substack, but before we get into that, what is the state of the New York City election? This mayor, we've been kind of covering it. Our corner of the internet is not super excited about the potential of a socialist mayor.
Well,
what's actually happening on the ground?
Yeah,
What did you
our
think
friends
about
in
that
LA.
that Photoshop beard job?
That felt more just like a printing error, honestly, to me. It didn't seem like they did a ton of
Printing
pre-processing.
length, ink dripping down longer.
I didn't see it as longer. I saw it more as just like when you reduce the resolution so much, like the gaps between the hairs kind of blur all together, and it makes the beard look thicker. I wasn't fully like someone went in there
I'm a
and
little
Photoshopped.
superstitious with the mayor stuff.
Okay, well, explain that.
Oh, I don't want to talk about it too much. I'm scared.
Okay.
I don't wanna move the needle.
You don't want to jinx it. Oh, yeah. Your single endorsement could actually
define
shift
the election.
Decide
I
it,
agree.
and then you would get.
I interviewed for them. I interviewed Cuomo. I interviewed Zoran, Lander, and Stringer for the newsletter last week. It was really fun.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Okay.
Well,
What's the
we'll
next question?
see
Let's move
how
on
it
from
evolves.
politics.
I want to talk about Substack,
Yeah.
how you're seeing it evolve. It feels like it just continues to have a moment. You're dominating the platform. At least that's what it looks like. We're not super active there, but what is the state of things?
Yeah, I've been writing on Substack for 5 years now. So I definitely I think I had a little bit of first mover advantage there. Like I know the platform so well, and I think even just understanding the tools and like what works well on the heat map of my own audience has been super helpful for me. And for anybody listening to this who doesn't know, like I write a newsletter every single day. So the opportunities for people to discover me are a lot higher. But I think that's something that's interesting about Substack is that just because you have a large following somewhere else doesn't mean it's necessarily going to carry over to a newsletter. Like the inbox seems like such precious real estate to people, and who subscribers allow into that feels a little bit more intentional. So it's not like you're gonna just follow 1,000 people like you do on Instagram. Yeah. So you have to be really fucking good to make it. And then you have to, sorry, can I curse on this?
We don't curse,
but you can. But you're welcome.
I'm gonna not.
If you
you have to be really excellent at content and something that I do. I have one of the more active chats on Substack, like across the whole platform. And I'm in conversation with my readers constantly, daily. And that's a lot of work as well. So the state of things on Substack, I'd say it's getting pretty competitive. You're seeing a lot of people jump over there and maybe try to make it, but aren't necessarily making money yet. They also don't have an advertising integration like Beehive or even Twitter or YouTube do. So if you're going to sell ads, you're on your own for that, or you have to get an agency. Yeah, what specifically do you want to know?
Yeah, no, I'm curious, like specifically, like how much some of the new social features are driving growth. Is that like a primary driver at this point, or do you still think you'd be? Which
features? Audio and video?
Well, like all of the new social features. I just see like
it seems like a lot of people are growing based on like recommendations in like basically like cross promotions or collabs.
So for me, like
I was in DC a few months ago and I met with somebody who's invests in this space, and he was asking me like, why don't you consider like doing your own thing off platform and building away from them? And there's I used to think about that a lot more, and I used to do that math a lot more, and I showed him my analytics on my dashboard because you can see how many people are discovering you from within the app and within their ecosystem. And he was like, they have you, like you can't leave. You're stuck there. And it's not a bad gig. Like they take 10% of what I make, which I think is totally fair considering how
they probably drive more than 10% of growth, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're probably driving consistently 10% growth, and so that's totally that maths out just fine.
Yeah.
When I think about Substack, I think of peak Substack for me was like pre-2020, like that era. When I think about when I was like reading multiple Substacks a day. Yep. And now Feed Me is the actually only newsletter that breaks into the important tab of my Gmail. And then, there's a bunch of other Substacks that are just kind of lost in the mix. I've just been trying to get a read on it. But if you are going to be dependent on a social platform or any type of media platform, Substack is a great one. Seems like
the friendliest one. Take your newsletter, take your Stripe account if you ever need to. Like you're so much less
I own
locked
my
in.
Subscriber list. I get to sell my own ads, which is going quite well. And when things break, they fix them. So
that's great.
That's great.
Talk about you had a fairly viral post. The tech guy in a hoodie stereotype is dead.
Oh yeah.
You were at WWDC and seeing a bunch of different labels and brands being worn. Does that surprise you? Does it not surprise you? What was your reaction broadly?
There's a writer this morning.
Menswear as a whole. Well, Will Welch was there, so clearly there's something. Will Welch is the editor of GQ. There's something happening, just with his spirit in the air at the.
People always think of iOS developers as being, at the foremost of fashion. So you should always be there if you're running GQ.
Yeah, I think I assumed more of them to look like the guys who work at the Apple store at my mall on Long Island or something. Sure. And it was impressive. Guys looked good. I wouldn't say capital S suiting, but fits. There were a lot of cool sneakers. I think that a few years ago it would have been more New Balance. I think that the Steve worshippers are sort of aging out a little bit. Now there's these younger guys who probably are seeing that moment as one of their big trips of the year and probably wanted to break out some fun outfits. Saw a lot of good sneakers, saw a lot of big watches, saw a Nautilus on a guy.
There we go.
Did he have an Apple Watch on the other wrist, or was it just fully committed?
A lot of Apple Watches also, but a lot of nice watches.
Very cool.
Which I don't know, a lot of people don't wear nice watches in their cities anymore. So
Well, you can't in New York because it will be taken from you very quickly.
Right, exactly. But it's safe space
Cupertino's
on the
different.
Apple
Yeah.
campus.
Cupertino, yeah.
at the donut.
Do you ever get tempted to angel invest? I'm sure you get asked constantly.
Do I get tempted to angel invest? I get asked, but that's not something that tempts me, no.
Why not?
My business is
stupid
kind of
use
my
of
main
money.
focus right now.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's good. That's good.
Are we post-peak celeb brand?
Are we post-peak celeb brand?
Yeah, are we on the
Whoa,
downslope?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So brands, like,
What do you think the interaction between celebrities and
I
consumer
think everybody
startups will
knows the
be
formula
going
too
forward?
well now, which is that the celebrity isn't actually going into the office every day. And
Yeah.
like that illusion has broken, right?
Sure.
So you can wear the suit on the stage at the conference and do the Forbes thing, but people are sort of understanding that they're not the operators and they're just sort of like a paid person to have their name on a brand, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing happens all the time where like the founder becomes a celebrity after they start the company.
Yep.
Which is more interesting to me than like a famous person hiring a bunch of people to do their work for them and getting paid for it.
Yeah. Do you think we move back to, I think of the celeb corporation collaboration eras as like, you used to just pay a celebrity to appear in your Super Bowl ad and it would be like $1 million in cash. Then we got to the point all the way on the other side of the spectrum where celebrities were commanding 30, 40, 50% equity grants in businesses that were built entirely around their brands. To your point, people are catching on that means that, yeah, they have a huge economic stake, so they're going to be talking about it all the time, but they're not really driving the product forward in any meaningful way. We could go back to just pay for a celebrity appearance in an ad, or we could move forward into something like what I've seen Saquon Barkley doing, where he is essentially just angel investing in these companies. And yes, he'll appear in the ads, but he's not saying he's building the company.
Yeah.
He's very transparent about that. He will partner with them, but he's equity aligned, but just like any other investor. And so I'm wondering if there will be a boom in that kind of paradigm or that model, or if we'll just go back to, companies and startups just being more comfortable writing a $400,000 check for a celebrity to appear in an ad. It's cash, and you know what it is.
Yeah, I don't see the latter like becoming a big thing. I just feel like it's such a specific kind of company that has that kind of marketing budget, and it's also really risky to invest in celebrities and influencers now because people are so volatile. I've definitely seen more of the angel investor in like hot girl Instagram bios, like
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a
model
status
DJ,
symbol.
angel investor.
Interesting.
And I think it's like a flex, you know,
Yeah.
it's like I'm also a businesswoman.
Yeah.
So I think that's already happening. Like there's like a soft boom of that, of people getting the opportunity to do that and basically only having one canned cocktail in their house, and not because they're necessarily getting paid, but because they quietly invested or not so quietly invested, and they're able to sort of flex a portfolio of investing, and that's like something they do besides whatever other things they do. But there was that Alex Earl Poppy deal last year where she was drinking it a lot, and I guess her dad, who sounds like a pretty savvy business guy, negotiated for her to get equity in the brand. So that's sort of like a prime example of that, where she wasn't going around saying that she was an angel investor, but I guess she was.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Poppy had a stacked cap table of various personalities, celebrities, athletes, etc.
Also like
and
private
then the
equity firms,
founders-
growth equity firms too. But yes.
Give us a temp check on wellness right now. Are we past peak wellness in many ways? People are doing more wellnessy things, but at the same time being unwell feels popular. Right?
I did like a chat with my readers the other day about alcohol consumption. And people are all over the map with that. There are people who are like, I'm 35, I haven't had a drink in 10 years, I'm perfectly happy, life is great. And then there's definitely a decent cohort of, somebody said that people who have been sober for years are kind of like strategically drinking now, which was interesting to me.
We strategically
wellness.
drink. We drink
I
Dom
think like
Perignon.
what the king of wellness right now is GLP-1s. Like that's
Sure.
sort of the most exciting thing happening.
Is that getting wrapped in different brands right now to appeal to different cohorts or
Yeah,
customer
I just think
demos?
it's changing people's chemical composition and changing the way that they think and work out and eat and socialize. And that's very interesting to me. What
Do you think that
happens
brands? Yeah. Do you think that brands are already being, the initial concern was that, fast food brands were cooked because people just were going to eat less.
Yep.
But then there's a downstream effect if New York girlies are microdosing GLP-1s, and then maybe they're like, I'm not going to go to Pilates today because, I'm already, happy with what I look,
Sure.
whatever. Are you hearing about any kind of like downstream
Winners and
business
losers
impact?
post GLP-1?
I don't think the Pilates industrial complex is affected. They're sort of the new weed store to me. They're everywhere, the Pilates studios.
Interesting.
It's like people are buying these cheap made in China reformer machines, setting them up and just like running crazy Pilates businesses. So I don't think that's going to be affected anytime soon. Because even if you get really thin, you still want to be shredded.
Shredded.
Of course.
Got to be shredded.
But
Diced.
also with like fast food, I'm pretty sure people on GLP-1s are still eating it. They're just not eating a lot of it. Like they're
Who is
getting
the
so fast
celebrity?
and throwing it
Who is
away.
Who was the celebrity that said the other day that he was just eating through it? He was just basically
Powering through it.
He said he was powering through it. It was
I
like
think that would
terrible.
be
That's
me.
fantastic.
I'm like convinced that my hunger would overpower it, but
That's amazing. What about other downstream effects from GLP-1s? I was talking to somebody who was like, they wanted to start a protein water company because they felt like with the GLP-1 boom, people would be eating less. They needed to supplement. Aside from the brands that have just wrapped GLP-1 in different landing pages, are there other kind of winners from the GLP-1 boom that you've seen? Adjacent.
somebody told me
companies
the
or
other day
trends?
that all these protein foods are not healing foods, and it changed the way that I think about people eating all this protein. Any other trickle down things?
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be some sort of like therapy blowback, like people needing more therapy, women being anxious.
Yeah.
as
What's the
symptoms.
state of Maha right now? Are people building new businesses around that, or they're mostly just old line businesses that are beneficiaries of Maha?
You guys follow Ballerina Farm?
Oh yeah.
I have
She
She
some
just
not
opened a little
closely.
store wherever
Okay.
she lives in the
Yeah.
Midwest.
She feels very Maha aligned.
Yeah, they like raw milk. They like farm stuff.
Yeah.
She's an interesting business person, though. I
Is
like
any of
watching her.
that breaking through in New York? It feels like a lot of the actual products that are Maha aligned feel very New York aligned, and yet the politics of the products could not be more disparate.
You're right. It's so political. It's like
Right.
there was a store in New York that was selling raw milk out of one fridge. It was like one of these.
And it probably wasn't a right wing store, right?
I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, but like, but
like-
it didn't present as like, oh yes,
There
this is
wasn't
like
an
MAGA
American
milk,
flag. It
right?
presented
And
as like
now-
rich women who buy
exactly.
$20 smoothies. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
exactly.
could fall all over the place on the spectrum, honestly.
Maybe.
But I don't think they sell it anymore because that's like bad for business if enough people
Interesting.
call you out on it.
Wow.
Even like there's this guy at the farmer's market, this Amish guy who used to sell raw milk, and he's not there anymore. And I don't
What
know where
happened?
he went.
Big Milk took him out.
Yeah, someone did.
Brutal.
Where do you get what's the most significant part of your scoop machine? Is it readers giving you tips? Is it walking around New York? Is it a combination? One of your readers asked me to ask you that.
I'm sure people, of course, they want to know where that is. I have some really good readers.
That's
who
the
are-
IP. That's the IP.
Yeah, I have some really good readers who are super loyal with sending me scoops, and they could send them to New York Magazine or the New York Times or Puck or Semaphore or whatever, and they send them to me, and I'm super grateful for that. And we have a good thing going. I also have an anonymous tip line, which is always, I think people get a little confused about what falls under
What qualifies. It's just
what I
PR
write about.
pitches.
Just
Like,
pure PR pitches,
Press
insane
releases.
gossip.
PR pitches aren't the bad. The bad stuff is like a politician walking out of a 3 p.m. screening of Baby Girl alone. Like that's like let
That's
them
not
rock.
news.
Yeah, that's pretty funny though.
And then I go out a lot. Like I
Sure.
go out 4 or 5 times a week. I go to parties, I go to dinners, I meet people, I meet readers. Yeah, so it's like my life. I feel sort of like a machine right now, but it's working really well, so I can't get
keep
too
oiling the
frustrated by that.
machine then. Well, congratulations on building a
Last
fantastic
question:
machine.
do copycats bother you? I'm sure you've had hundreds of people by now be like, "I'm gonna feed me for XYZ or feed me for that," or just like blatant. Do they get under your skin?
They used to, but data is a very calming force in my life right now, and especially in my business, and the numbers calm me down.
The numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
There we go. We're hitting the size gong.
Well, congratulations on everything, and thanks for stopping
Thanks for
by.
coming on. You're always
Thank you,
welcome.
guys.
Yeah, we'd
Take
love
it
to have
easy.
you back and talk more.
Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Up next, we have Lennart Heim calling in from the RAND Corporation. We're going to talk about AI models. We're talking about
We got crazy range today.
Crazy range today. It's a whirlwind tour. Wait, let's check on Tyler. How's he doing?
Tyler, how you doing?
I'm done.
He's done.
So
the Fury has been assembled.
I think my final time was somewhere around hour 15. So
Okay.
double hour 19.
Hour 19.
So yeah, I mean, pretty shameful performance.
I think it looks good.
I mean, yeah, send the electrolytes my way.
Okay.
I'll start chowing
I think
down.
Dylan grabbed a cup and some water. If
make
you
you
guys
some
want to grab it,
electrolytes.
let's get
But
some
it's
electrolytes
really, I mean, it's
going up in here.
Very beautiful model.
It looks great. Yeah,
it's
I
really
love
cool.
It. Very cool. I'm glad we have that in the studio now. Well, enjoy your horse electrolytes. Hope you have a good rest of the stream. We will hop on with our next
We'll
guest
check back
now.
in with for a taste review.
Yeah. But when we finish this next interview. Anyway, welcome to the studio, Lennart. How are you doing today? Let's bring in Lennart and chat about artificial intelligence and geopolitics. How are you doing?
Hey, good to see you. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're great. Would you mind kicking us off with a little introduction on yourself and what you do day to day?
Sure. Yeah, Lennart Heim calling in from Washington, D.C. I'm a, what do I call myself? Researcher working on AI policy, AI governance, background electric engineering. I think part of my mission is to bridge the technical world and the policy world, and that's what I've been doing before AI was cool, the last 4 or 5 years, actually. Yeah, and now AI is cool, and since then I've been ever busy.
It is extremely cool. It's driving the news cycle
Essentially the
every
coolest.
single day. Yeah, pretty much the coolest technology. Do a little level setting for us. What is the dominant story? How is the race between the U.S. and China shaping up on the AI front? What are the interesting threads to pull on? What are the most important companies to be tracking right now?
Yeah, well, that's a tough question. Where to start? I think it's like still the DeepSeek trauma. It's like
Sure.
still there, still dominant, right? I think that was like this initial story. The US is like so far ahead. There is no Chinese model being closed, and then DeepSeek came out and
Yep.
definitely had a big impact in DC, but I guess also in the broader world, as we saw in the stock market. And I think it's pretty dominant here, still in DC. Like in DC, you always talk about things which Silicon Valley did half a year ago, or even a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's still part of the dominant discussion. And then export controls, I guess, is also a big topic right now, right? We've got the
Sure.
US-China trade talks going on right now,
Yep.
where they're negotiating beyond export controls, which impact AI, but export controls famously had an big impact on AI in China.
Yeah, so let's talk about DeepSeek. One of the narratives that came out of the DeepSeek story was all the American labs are completely cooked. And then we got Jevons Paradox and NVIDIA popped back up and all the labs seem to be making tons of money. OpenAI crossed $10 billion in revenue run rate and things seem to be going well. But what are the wrong lessons from DeepSeek? What are people getting wrong about the DeepSeek story? How relevant is DeepSeek? We're still hearing about it as being important geopolitically in some of these jump ball nations that aren't quite allies, aren't quite rivals, and they might be interested in building an open source stack on top of Huawei Ascend, DeepSeek, Manus, that type of stack. What are the wrong lessons that people are learning from the DeepSeek story?
I think DeepSeek made such a big noise because we're just lacking a good reference class. They just came out, pretty impressive model. It was openly available, and we had a paper attached to it, right?
Yeah.
And then it came out also saying it cost us 6 million.
Yeah.
Does any one of us know how much it cost OpenAI or like Anthropic or any of these other companies what to do? We don't, right?
Yeah.
And I think this just really made headline news. We like sometimes get like Sam Altman going on stage saying, I think at some point he said it costed them 100 million to do GPT-4.
Yep.
But 100 million what? just a training compute? Is it just like buying the hardware? Probably not. Is it paying the staff engineers?
Definitely
So like
not.
the reference class is like pretty important here.
Sure.
Well, and it costed them 100 million. What? Like this not 2 years ago, even more.
Yep.
And now DeepSeek 6 million. So I think people just like we're lacking. It's like, wow, this sounds impressive, but like they had just no reference class of what's actually going on within the companies. And I think a couple of weeks later, Anthropic CEO Dario put out a blog post saying like, actually, we can train to the same efficiency. And I think this was like for people monitoring the market, not surprising. We just like know the trend lines and we know it gets like vastly cheaper every single goddamn day to train such a system. So to that extent, not surprising, but like you look at this, you don't have a reference class and then it just looks really impressive. Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of the more technical analysts in the AI world were excited to see the open source results, excited to hear about FP8 training, for example. We talked to Dylan Patel. He was telling us, oh, well, OpenAI was doing FP8 training years ago. They just didn't tell anyone because it was kind of like their edge, I guess. But all the labs had kind of figured that stuff out. They just hadn't told everyone exactly how they did it. DeepSeek came out there and told everyone, and it sounded like they really had jumped ahead. Instead, it seemed like they just jumped to the frontier, had not fully advanced beyond the frontier necessarily, but then done it in an open source way. What was the read on the strategy to open source? It felt like there was a very deliberate, like that launch, if it had been closed source, $20 a month, very difficult to access, rate limited, lots of safety harness around it, that we would have been telling a very different story about DeepSeek if they had said, oh, this cost $1 trillion, it took us forever. Instead, it seemed like they were like a number of superlative and viral hooks that really captured the American news media and drove a big cycle. How much of that was intentional versus how much of that was just like a random byproduct?
Yeah, I think as you're saying, there were just like so many check boxes that ticked.
Yep.
It was during the first week of Trump.
Yep.
It was an open release Model 8, right? It was surprisingly so cheap. It's coming out of China.
Yep.
Oh, and it was like the first public reasoning model.
Yeah.
Right. So just like all of the things happening at the same time. So like wherever you're coming from, DC excited because it's out of China, but we thought we fixed it. We did export controls, right?
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, oh, it's an open source model, right?
Yep.
And everybody looking at like, actually, how does this reasoning work?
Yeah.
Because OpenAI did it before, but they didn't tell us, right? So again, just ticking all of these boxes. How much of this was deliberate? I don't think this is like a state coordinated effort that they said like this is how we're going to do it. I think DeepSeek had like a pretty open commitment to like releasing models publicly before, right? So they will just been following that. It was just like to some degree, if there's a marketing strategy behind it, they did it right. I just expect most of the things are just like how the tech works, right?
Yep.
And they were early on in reasoning. They were like one of the first companies doing it publicly.
Yep.
And then it just made a ton of noise. And again,
even though
justifiably
ChatGPT had a reasoning model available, it was only available at a premium tier. And so for a lot of AI consumers, I think their first interaction with a reasoning model was DeepSeek or the DeepSeek app. Which was just a very interesting kind of like go-to-market strategy, essentially.
And also seeing the chain of thought, right?
Yeah.
Like the reasoning, which we didn't see before, right?
And even the cost
like
thing.
this changed a ton.
Yeah, even a cost thing. A lot of financial folks. You mentioned that Silicon Valley was excited about open source. Washington was, interested in the story because of the China angle, but also the financiers, the NVIDIA investors were interested in the financial impact of this. So yeah, it was fascinating.
But I got it wrong. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's at least my take.
How much of the existence of DeepSeek do you ascribe to China's positioning around high frequency trading?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I mean, like DeepSeek sits in the hedge fund, right?
Yes.
And they were initially buying 10,000 A100s or 5,000 A100s in 2022, I think, before the export controls.
Yes.
And tons of GPUs always still go to hedge funds because we don't exactly know what they're doing, but they definitely like accelerated computing.
For sure.
And partially machine learning, bunch of other stuff. Are they all training large language models? Probably not.
Nope.
And I think then one theory I've heard, I'm not sure how true it is, there was like the crackdown in China on the tech sector, right? Including high frequency trading, hedge funds and more. This made them then pivot to AI. It's like, well, if we can't trade on the market anymore, what should we do with all of these GPUs? Well, it turns out AI is this new hot, cool thing. And then I think the other thing which is important here, when you have these hedge funds, they do like really low level optimizations, like writing their own kernels. They don't do like just high level PyTorch. They go down there and try to get like every single point of utilization out of the models, out of the hardware. And this helped them, right? Like DeepSeek has pretty cracked engineers. I think this was like pretty obvious once we saw like the code. And this then helped them to then train a pretty decent good model.
Let's talk about Llama. The Llama 4 launch was a little rocky. Obviously, there was allegations of some benchmark, just over optimization. It seems like a lot of the big frontier labs or the independent labs kind of just don't even care about benchmarks anymore. It's all about big model smell and just the actual performance of the products. At the same time, I've been really interested in this narrative of Llama as a very important American export, as a counter to the Huawei Ascend, DeepSeek, Manus stack that other countries might be comping, because yes, they might be interested in doing a deal with Stargate and building some and buying a whole bunch of NVIDIA chips, but what are they going to put on top of it? Are they going to, maybe they don't want to go all the way with OpenAI or Anthropic. Llama seems like an interesting wedge there. How important is that? What is your reaction to the Meta Llama strategy and how they're being perceived in Washington right now?
I would be curious on your guys' takes on this. I'm like still unsure how I feel about this. I mean, let's just start with DeepSeek. I think it's an interesting moment in time when all of the leading US models are just behind closed doors and the best open models coming out of China. I'm worried about it because this model is partially biased and it lies about the CCP. It has some Chinese propaganda in it, right? Why is this bad? Imagine you're like some developer in another country. You want to build a new education app. You're using this model and then, you teach your kids Chinese propaganda. I think that's great, right? I think it's even worse if you think about sleeper agents. People know about this paper from Anthropic, right? You can basically have like sleeper agents sitting in this model. When you talk about a certain topic, it starts giving you code with vulnerabilities. But this can apply to anything else. And it's like really hard to look for it because you don't know what to look for, right? So that's worrying. I don't think that's the case with DeepSeek right now. But going forward in the future, the case just like if you use an open model, you don't really know what's in there, what's hiding in there, right? This goes for all companies, but I think we got more reason to mistrust certain other companies than, for example, Meta.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think that it kind of makes me think that Anthropic might have a real business on their hands with AI safety. Obviously, they branded it all around, we want to prevent AGI doom and fast takeoffs. But if you just think about like, hey, we're going to launch this model in our organization and we want to make sure that the code that it writes doesn't have random vulnerabilities, that feels like a very important like AI safety product almost to evaluate these models, test them, and essentially root out sleeper agents. And so I've all of a sudden flipped to like very excited about the work that Anthropic's doing on that front. Jordy, do you have any questions?
I think this could be like a real benefit to them.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah,
Reinforcement learning from human feedback gave ChatGPT a rise. It was like some people trying to make the models more useful, but also less harmful. And turns out they turn out to be a bunch more useful. And I guess like we will see more about this going forward, and particularly for code, or even if government wants to adopt these models. Right? You just better be goddamn sure.
My question was around news from the last 24 hours, basically. And specifically, people talk about the application of AI in warfare, but it's always at this sort of like very generalized high level of like, oh, we're using AI. And I can easily imagine, simulation scenarios, data collection, processing, all that stuff, like kind of going up to the point of a conflict and then autonomous, drones and things like that. But what are the ways in which you've understood AI to be used in an actual like conflict scenario?
Sure.
I mean, look, I don't do narrow AI or drones. To some extent, I expect there's like a bunch of just like computer vision applications and more. But if you look at like frontier, like if you look at large language models, I think one big application is just intelligence, right? Literally my job on a day-to-day basis is like open source intelligence. I want to know what's going on around the world. Nobody's telling me, well, except DeepSeek, they sometimes publish a paper, but like, I don't know what the US companies are doing. I don't know what's going on in China in the semiconductor industry. So just a bunch of data, I feed into my LLMs and ask them what's going on, right? And for intelligence operations, it's the same. We saw in the last 24 hours pretty targeted attacks. Israel is famously known for pretty good intelligence operations. And I think they exactly knew who they were hitting based on these types of operations, right? And if you just have like a nice backdoor on a smartphone and you just like feed all of the chat transcript in an LLM, can make sense out of this, right? And you can do it at a larger, way bigger scale to identify the targets and also identify patterns, which again might be harder for humans to do. At least you can like augment humans.
Yeah, I mean, they used to do that with like keyword search. Okay, like we have a ton of data. Who's talking about bombs. He was talking about attacks, and people would use code words, and LLMs are really good at deciphering that type of stuff. Fascinating. Give us a state of the union on export controls for AI chips. What's expected on the horizon? How has the landscape changed over the last, couple months at least?
Right. I mean, when Biden left the office, there was like two big rules coming out. The one rule was, I think many people are tracking, the foundry due diligence rule. It was a big hiccup where Huawei produced a bunch of chips over at TSMC in Taiwan, which they were not supposed to. They did it by a shell company. 3 million chips, that's quite a lot. That's way more than they produced. That's what they got their hands on. And the government reacted with a new rule, basically telling TSMC, like, goddamn, you gotta do better due diligence and check who your customer is and make sure they don't end up with Huawei. Because they broke two rules. No chips for Huawei at all, and please, no big AI chips for any entity in China, right? Wow. So this was a big move. That's still the case. I applaud that. I think this was a pretty sensible move to just make sure they can't, again, get their access to that many chips. And the other one was the diffusion framework, which I guess you probably discussed at some point before, right? Yeah. Like broader controls to some degree on all of the world, deciding, to some degree dealing with the Gulf states, dealing with a bunch of in-between countries, where people were worried about chip smuggling, but also data centers being built there. Malaysia is being such a country where a bunch of data centers being built there. Really interesting reporting today, where I think the Wall Street Journal reported people were going back and forth on an airplane with hard drives to train models over Malaysia.
I saw that. We were going to read that.
Yeah.
Wild.
Which really again speaks to the efforts they're going to get access to AI chips and how creative they get. And also from my point of view, I'm just getting surprised every single time of how creative they get to get access to AI chips. Anyways, that's the rule they did, but this one is not being enforced right now. It's not officially revoked yet. We're still waiting for it to officially be gone. But at least Commerce, Lutnick, and Kessler put out a statement saying they're not enforcing it. They will come up with a replacement rule. And this replacement rule then needs to deal with, basically all the countries except the clearly competitors, China, Russia, North Korea. They're all controlled. They will continue being controlled. But what about all the other countries, like the Gulf states, like countries with a bunch of smuggling going on? And me as somebody from outside the government is waiting to see more moves there.
Yep. I have one last question. Good, Jordy?
Yeah.
Today, a bunch of technologists joined the Army Reserve in the newly formed Detachment 201 Executive Innovation Corps. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're seeing technologists and the tech community plug in DC? What is needed there? What do you want to see on the horizon? This seems like a step in the right direction, but it feels like a job's not finished moment.
Yeah, I think that's the right audience, like a call to all the techies to come to DC.
Yep.
The pay is not better here. It's also pretty damn hard. We're living in a swamp here. But I think there's a strong case for impact.
Yep.
So as a techie, I think when I talk to young undergrads, in DC, I just did a bachelor's in machine learning. What do I know? It's it's plausible you're the smartest person in the room, and many times in DC, which is way harder than in San Francisco. People don't know policy, which sometimes can be a benefit to be a bit ignorant about how the game is being played. Just look, here's just the math.
Yeah, just
here's
fresh
how it
eyes.
works out, right? Yeah. So I love techies coming to government, just crunching numbers. I think they should sometimes be less opinionated. Just look, here are the numbers, we crunch them. Could suggest this, could suggest that, but just grounding it in analysis and in objective things. When I think about China and AI chips, I can crunch the numbers on how fast the chips are, how many they're producing, and in contrast, how fast American chips are and how many we're producing, right? And this is just a good analysis to be run. How this then impacts the broader scheme of the AI ecosystem and who's winning the AI race and what? It's a different question, but we can then take it from there, right? So if I see stuff like this, be it in the military, but also just generally in government, particularly anything around export controls, anything around just understanding of what the hell is going on. Just having somebody explain hey, DeepSeek is a reasoning model.
Yep.
What is, everybody talked about distillation. Really just explaining the basics is things people should do. And I think people with a CS, an undergrad degree in computer science, they can do it. And I would love to have them there. I'm hiring, by the way. So if anybody's listening, please join me, apply.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, in general, I think it's good that we don't just have, these sort of high-profile technologists only joining Doge. There's other things that are important in the government besides just, taking a sledgehammer or scalpel to different parts of the government. So
and also just government getting stuff wrong. I think the most famous example is the initial export controls 2022 were trying to control AI chips.
Yeah.
And they used two parameters, technical parameters, which probably 99% of TC won't understand.
Yeah.
Total processing performance, how many flops it got, and then also the interconnect bandwidth, how fast it can talk to our chips. And they messed something up there. The NVIDIA could basically design a new chip sitting right at the threshold, but still having high flops, which is basically as good as the other chips. And that's what DeepSeek used. And then it took them a damn year to fix it. And I can confidently say they knew a month later they should do better there. And that's just a thing where like techies, and you didn't need to be the smartest person. I've never trained a really big model. You can just tell by the specs, like, guys, something is off here. And
or even just asking, like, you know, one of the foundation model labs like OpenAI, I'm sure they could tell you like, hey, like, do not restrict these 3 parameters. And it just seems like there was not enough back
if they would answer. NVIDIA doesn't answer these questions, but I think
NVIDIA wouldn't. But I mean, you could imagine that plenty of the labs that will compete with Chinese labs would love to answer that question. Right? Because they have a huge incentive not to be outcompeted by DeepSeek, right? And so you got to, but maybe they'd be talking their own book too much. You know, there's always dynamics, but at least having a technologist in the room would be beneficial. Anyway, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for hopping on. We'd love to have you back. There's more news. We will talk to you soon.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Have a great weekend.
Cheers. You too, guys.
Talk to you soon. If closing out the news for the week,
let's take it over.
Let's take it over to Tyler.
How are the horse electrolytes?
Okay, so I haven't tried it yet. Scoop. I think so. It says a scoop. 1 scoop is for light exercise.
Okay.
So for I think probably a medium-sized horse, I assume.
Okay.
So it's. I'm looking at the ingredients. There's an incredible amount. It's like all salt.
It's all salt.
Of course.
Wait,
yes.
you have to at least ChatGPT that you're not like taking a deadly dose of salt right now.
I think it's probably fine.
Probably fine. We'll go with probably fine. That's the horse mentality.
It smells good.
Does it have like a lemon lime taste to it? Is it apple?
Oh,
it's strong.
It's like I'm drinking salt water.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think you might have to water it.
Lemon.
There's lemon in there.
There's definitely some flavor. I mean, it says apple flavor. I'm not really getting any apple notes.
Yes. Okay, well, congratulations. You did it in under an hour and a half.
You did it. Well, you have a whole summer to finish the whole bucket.
Yeah. Wait, what was the final time? An hour and 15 minutes?
I think hour 19.
Hour 19. That's still way faster than ChatGPT clocked it. I took a picture of that Anduril Lego set build time. I said, how long do you think it will take to put together this pretty simple 619 piece Lego set? I said a beginner would take 3 to 4 hours, an intermediate builder 2 to 3 hours, and an experienced Lego fan 1.5 to 2 hours. You did it better than they did. So I think you were only wrong in your own, you overestimated yourself. But you outperformed
should always do.
The average Lego builder. So congrats for that.
Okay,
and enjoy the horse electrolytes.
I mean, I'm sweating a lot. I think this will help me, bring me back to
you're sweating out the electrolytes. You need to refresh. This makes a lot of sense. This is great.
Everybody in tech is always talking about going to the horse doctor, but never talking about getting horse electrolytes over the counter.
Yes, the horse electrolytes are key.
That's what you want to be taking.
Well, the scale deal has officially closed. Meta's paying $14.3 billion to buy 49% of Scale, the industry's leading data dealer. Alex Wang wrote a note to Scale employees. He said, "When I founded Scale in 2016, it was amidst some of the early AI breakthroughs. DeepMind had just released AlphaGo, and Google had just released TensorFlow. It was still incredibly early. It was clear even then that data was the lifeblood of AI systems, and that was the inspiration behind starting Scale. Since then, the journey has been extraordinary. We've grown to over 1,500 people, become a trusted partner for model builders, enterprises, and governments building and deploying the smartest AI tools and applications. Scale is now one of the most impactful companies in the world." He closes by saying, "Today's investment also allows us to give back in recognition of your hard work and dedication to Scale over the past several years. The proceeds from Meta's investment will be distributed to those of you who are shareholders and vested equity holders, while maintaining the opportunity to continue participating in our future growth as ongoing equity holders. The exceptional team here has been key to our success, so I'm thrilled to be able to return the favor with this meaningful liquidity distribution." So congratulations to everyone.
Let's give it up. Hit the gong for liquidity events, John. Lee Marie, Eric Tornberg.
Lots of winners. Lots of friends of the show. Ben Thompson broke it down in a piece talking about Meta and Scale AI. The most obvious explanation for the structure is that Meta wants to avoid the sort of antitrust scrutiny that would attend to an acquisition. This explanation applies broadly. Big tech generally and Meta specifically are under massive scrutiny in terms of acquisitions, including Meta going to trial for acquisitions made over a decade ago. And narrowly, Scale AI is a supplier for not just Meta, but also Meta's competitors. The problem is that is that just Meta isn't acquiring Scale AI doesn't mean the deal can't be scrutinized. Indeed, Section 7 of the Clayton Act is explicit about covering only partial acquisitions. So the FTC can still review this, but it'll probably be a little bit easier. And so that's what they're gunning for. These guidelines were reaffirmed by the Trump administration earlier this year. So a lot of people were expecting it to be complete game on, anyone can acquire anything. That hasn't been the case. We heard about this on the campaign trail. A lot of folks in the Trump administration were signaling that Lina Khan made some good points and they were not going to completely reverse course, even if they were going to replace her. Even beyond that, says Ben Thompson, however, and perhaps this makes the regulator's point, it seems likely that this will kill Scale AI's business with the big labs in particular, who would be concerned about their data ending up in the hands of Meta, which is to say that this is a deal that would destroy the enterprise value of that Meta is theoretically investing in. And so that will be something that will be debated in these merger guidelines when the FTC ultimately reviews it, but it's looking pretty good because they closed pretty quickly. As it is, many of the labs, particularly OpenAI, have been bringing in more of their data work in-house, which helped contribute to Scale AI missing revenue targets last year. From the information they reported this. I mean, they still put up amazing numbers, and so obviously a lot of stuff was working, but you could imagine that some of the labs were starting to bring these, if they really are believers in, hey, we got to own our data collection and data processing forever, let's build that function in-house. And I think they started to do that, or at least partner with other competitors in the space. And so Ben Thompson continues to write about Meta's reset. In fact, the more pertinent angle to discuss this deal is probably Llama. Llama 4 was widely viewed as a disappointing model, and a big portion of the original Llama team has since left Meta. And Ben Thompson thought that Mark Zuckerberg's media tour about AI seemed a bit forced and unfocused, and had heard through the grapevine that Zuckerberg was considering a wholesale reset of the company's AI efforts, with the biggest priority being the search for a new AI chief to take firmer control over the company effort. In that in the end, may be the Occam's razor explanation for the deal. This is a very expensive acqui-hire. Alexander Wang, Scale AI's co-founder and CEO, with the price softened a bit by virtue of paying Scale AI for work that Meta was going to have the company do anyway. Wang isn't a researcher, but he's an executive and leader who is familiar with the space, and Meta needs leadership in addition to talent.
He's a deals guy.
He's a deals guy.
Go into Meta and continue to be deal making, which will be, I think, a great asset to Meta overall.
And so Ben Thompson closes with a little bit on sustaining versus disruptive innovation. The other reason to believe Meta versus Google comes down to the difference between disruptive and sustaining innovations. The late Professor Clayton Christensen described the difference, and we're familiar with that. So the question of whether generative AI is sustaining or disruptive innovation for Google remains uncertain 2 years after Ben Thompson raised the question. Obviously, Google has tremendous AI capabilities, both in terms of infrastructure and research, and generative AI is a sustaining innovation for its display advertising business and its cloud business. At the same time, the long-term questions around search monetization remain as pertinent as ever. And this is the question I want to debate with Ben when he comes on the show. There's this idea. So it came out earlier that Sundar Pichai had not read The Innovator's Dilemma, and people were saying, oh, like he should have, because this is the classic example of Google being disrupted by a new technology, generative AI. Ben Thompson said, it doesn't matter. The whole point of disruptive innovation is that it is structural, and therefore it doesn't matter if you've read the book. There's nothing you can do about it. That's kind of the point of disruptive innovation. You're being disrupted. But my question is, what if Google had chatbots before ChatGPT? What if they had launched the Gemini app first and been the first to market and gained all of that like mimetic attention? Well, the disruptive innovation framework would say that Google would be in a tough spot because they wouldn't be able to monetize Gemini as quickly as they were losing volume in search. And so search revenues would decline faster than they could make it back up on the new model. And so what we're seeing right now is ChatGPT is growing. They're at $10 billion in revenue. But I don't think we're seeing a fall off in search. It seems additive. And so the weirdest thing is that if you ran back the simulation and you did put Google in a position, like let's just say Google owned 100% of ChatGPT. Like the combined enterprise value the stock would not be in the trash as they disrupted themselves. And so there's this interesting question of like, there's this fear that your earnings will drop as you pivot away from search-based display advertising, search advertising to a subscription chatbot model. But I don't know if that's actually playing out because the overall market, the combined revenues of Google and OpenAI seem to be not declining. Like we're not in this nadir. We're not in this in this trough of like disruption necessarily.
Yeah, Meta and Facebook had the luxury of acquiring Instagram, starting to monetize Instagram, still being able to grow Facebook at that time.
I mean, maybe there's a little bit in deceleration. I remember when Meta was like in the process of somewhat being disrupted by TikTok, they launched Reels, and there was questions about Reels monetization because if people spend more time on Reels than the normal Instagram feed, and there aren't as many ads in Reels as there are in the feed, then even though the user time might be going up, your revenue might be going down. And so that was a fear. That was something that was weighing on the stock. Ultimately, it was not borne out. But I'm just not seeing the data, but I want to dig into it more. I want to talk to Ben about it because there's clearly, I think I'm wrong, but for reasons I'm unaware of. And so I've been digging into that. So Ben goes on to write, Meta, however, does not have a search business to potentially disrupt and a whole host of ways to leverage generative AI across its business. This is what I was talking about with Joe Weisenthal, talking about even if Meta doesn't get like a banger AI first consumer product out into the market, they just have so many generative AI workloads, whether that's sorting ads, generating ads, internal profanity filtering, all their different content moderation.
I think it's easy to see how Meta will benefit from more in 10 years from now, more content will be produced, which means the more good content will be produced, even if it looks like AI slop right now. And when you think about the business holistically and Meta as effectively an entertainment company, will people want more and more entertainment?
This is what Ben Thompson was writing about. He said Meta's strategy is to commoditize your complements. A generative AI is a complement to Meta's platforms. And so, yes, if people are using generative AI to generate slop, that's still fine as long as people are enjoying it. But ultimately, people will use it as a different tool for video editing and sound generation and drop out the background noise and replace my background with a cinematic Vista or something like that. So So for Zuckerberg and company, Ben Thompson thinks AI is absolutely a sustaining technology, which is why it ultimately makes sense to spend whatever is necessary to get the company moving in the right direction. It's also worth noting that Meta doesn't really have any alternatives other than continuing to invest. Google is a competitor for advertising, the most financially compelling use case today. OpenAI is a competitor for consumer attention, Meta's most important scarce resource. I suppose Anthropic would be a potential partner, but per the point above, that seems like the ultimate culture clash. If anything, the most compatible partners for Meta would be Microsoft and Apple, but the former is obviously tied up with OpenAI, and the latter, well, never say never forever, but definitely never for now. Great ending to Ben Thompson's update.
That's right. Well, we have a video that we can pull up that hit the timeline earlier this morning.
Let's review it.
I was able to confront PT.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we should play it.
You saw him on the street? Let's play it.
Saw him on the street.
Oh, here he is.
Is it true that competition is for losers? Sir, is it true that you encourage young people to drop out of university?
The background.
Mr. Teal, is it true that your funds have double-digit GP commits? Sir, how can you say you're contrarian when everyone is contrarian? Mr. Teal, is it possible for there to be too much venture capital?
Never.
Mr. Teal, have you been a victim of other VCs gaming the Midas list?
Absolutely.
Sir, why do you refuse to pick a favorite Renee Girard book? Mr. Teal, what do you have to say to people that think they're a lottery ticket?
That's a great one.
Mr. Teal, must all venture returns be power law distributed? Sir, why do you think why questions are overdetermined?
Oh man, well, really asking the pressing, important questions, the questions that he clearly doesn't want to answer.
Yep.
But I'm sure over time, we'll have them on the show, and we'll try to pull some of those answers out.
Lots of fun. The last story we should cover before we drop off: Chinese AI companies dodge U.S. chip curbs by flying suitcases of hard drives abroad. Lennart on the show mentioned this. Engineers are carrying data to countries where NVIDIA chips are available, frustrating Washington's aims. No one really anticipated this, but apparently Chinese engineers are transporting hard drives with AI training data to Malaysia. So they take all their training data, they load it onto a bunch of hard drives, throw those in suitcases, fly to Malaysia, and then do the training run there, and then take the weights back. And so that's like the chips aren't even moving. Like the whole idea of exporting chips is now irrelevant if you can do the run locally in a different country. So this AI diffusion story is going to become so much more complex. Like it's just going to be so complicated forever because there's going to be shell companies, and if people are willing to do this, anything's on the table. The next DeepSeek run is going to be it's going to be a movie. It's going to be a movie. Anyway, we will be following it here. We hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on Monday.
I cannot wait, John.
Cannot wait for Monday.
To be back at this table.
2 more sleeps.
2 more sleeps.
2 more sleeps. Or is
Wait,
it 3? We're not going live on Sunday.
We might.
If there's emergency, we might go live. You never know. But until then,
thank you for tuning in, folks.
The rest of your weekend.
Have a great rest of your Friday, and we'll see you Monday.